Chapter 773. His tone seemed to be saying that he was unlucky to have two women being controlled by someone else. Yu Qinshu glanced at him and said indifferently, "One of them is my master's wife." Master's wife? Immortal Lord Crocodile was slightly surprised. Bai Changchun's image immediately appeared in his mind, and he said solemnly, "Go ahead and do it. Although it will be difficult to save everyone in an instant, with my help, I can at least guarantee that nothing will happen to the two of them." Yu Qinshu knew that he had misunderstood, but he was too lazy to explain now. Unexpectedly, Immortal Lord Crocodile raised his chin and said, "The woman sitting on the bench is indeed beautiful. She should also be a hostage. Otherwise, why would her dantian be sealed? Aren't you going to save her?" Yu Qinshu's gaze landed on Lu Yanqing. "Her dantian was sealed?" Immortal Crocodile grunted. The former snorted. "She asked for it." Time passed slowly. The two hid in the cave and waited for a long time. Immortal Lord Crocodile did not know what Yu Qinshu was waiting for. After the sun rose and set, Immortal Lord Crocodile could not help but ask Yu Qinshu, who was resting with his eyes closed, "Are you still not going to act?" Yu Qinshu opened his eyes and said slowly, "It is not appropriate for me to appear first. If I appear first, he will definitely take my woman as the main hostage, which will increase the risk. Damn it, when Lanfeng's woman is a human, so are my women not? I will hold off for now, and they will suffer less." Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. "Someone else is coming?" Yu Qinshu nodded and said, "Waiting for help. It should be almost time. Since the demonic book is so magical, it is better to be prepared. Saving people is a small matter, but killing that guy is the important thing. Once we do, we must eliminate him completely. We cannot let him escape again and leave behind future trouble. I don't have time to put out fires everywhere." He then turned to Immortal Lord Crocodile and said solemnly, "Old monster, you should know better than me how dangerous the demonic book is. This person cannot be left alive. If I fail, please do your best to stop him. No matter what, we cannot let him escape." Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded slightly and said, "Those who cultivate the demonic book cannot be left alive. In that case, let me do it myself. I promise I will kill him in one move." "No." Yu Qinshu's gaze turned sharp as he shook his head. He gnashed his teeth and said, "There are some things I can choose not to do, but there are some things I have no choice but to do." He grabbed my woman. "I'm a man. If I can't even deal with someone who touched my woman, what face do I have to come out? If I don't kill him with my own hands, how can I swallow this anger? Bastard." Immortal Crocodile's hair stood on end when he heard the viciousness in his words. It seemed that this kid had been provoked, but even so, he was still holding back until now. It was obvious that he was angry and about to explode. "There's going to be a good show," Immortal Lord Crocodile muttered to himself. Just then, the sound of flying came from above. In the blink of an eye, two figures landed in the Spirit Fragrance Valley. It was Nongzhu and Wenlanfeng. Yu Qinshu immediately stood up, patted Immortal Crocodile's shoulder, and said, "The people we are waiting for are here. It's time to make a move. Help me keep an eye on them. Don't let that bastard escape." At Xin Laojiu's warning, all the people in the abode stood up. Yin Juexing, who was sitting cross-legged, flashed to Lu Yanqing's side. He saw Nongzhu and Wenlanfeng appearing at the same time, but did not see Yu Qinshu. He stared at Lu Yanqing with a sneer and said, "Senior Lu, I didn't want to be rude to you, but I'm afraid I have to apologize to you now." He reached out and grabbed Lu Yanqing's hair. His wrist was in a circle, and his hair wrapped around his fist and stuck to the back of her head. Yin Juexing pushed Lu Yanqing out just like that. Nongzhu's eyes burned with anger when she saw that the world's most beautiful woman had her dantian sealed and was being abused. When Lanfeng's heart was about to break, he roared, "Yin Juexing, how dare you?" His roar echoed in the Spirit Fragrance Valley. The grief and indignation in his tone were indescribable. Yin Juexing, followed by Xin Laojiu and others, slowly pushed Lu Yanqing, who had lost her wits. He ignored Wenlanfeng and stared at Nongzhu with a faint smile. "I didn't expect Mr. Nongzhu to come here. Does Senior Wen think that Mr. Nongzhu can save Senior Lu for me? Nongzhu did not say a word. She narrowed her eyes and stared at the fist wrapped in Lu Yanqing's hair. She thought it was terrible. Yin Juexing's move was too cruel. It was as if he had become one with Lu Yanqing. In addition, Lu Yanqing's dantian was sealed. No matter how high their cultivation was, it would be difficult to save Lu Yanqing. When Lanfeng roared again, "Let her go." If Lu Yanqing was not in his hands, he would have rushed to tear Yin Juexing into pieces. Nongzhu glanced at him. Yin Juexing suddenly shouted, "Of course, no problem. But what about Yu Qianqiu? Didn't you promise to find Yu Qianqiu? As long as I see Yu Qianqiu, I will keep my promise and let her go." When Lanfeng was completely speechless, he turned to Nongzhu and asked, "Didn't you say that Yu Qianqiu would come? Why haven't I seen him until now?" Nongzhu also wondered why Yu Qianqiu did not come, but she stared at Yin Juexing calmly and said, "Yin Juexing, you are brave. You dare to take the risk alone. Mr. Nongzhu, you flatter me." Yin Juexing looked back and said with a faint smile, "I have so many people with me. How can it be regarded as taking the risk alone? But Mr. Nongzhu really shouldn't come here." "Oh." Nongzhu snorted. "What do you mean? Shouldn't I help my friend when he is in trouble?" "Ha, that's true. But because you are here to help, your calmness makes me feel a little unsafe," Yin Juexing said as he pulled back the hair in his hand. Lu Yanqing's face, which had lost its luster, was immediately exposed to the two of them. Nongzhu narrowed her eyes. When Lanfeng roared bitterly, "Yin Juexing, let her go." Yin Juexing stared at Lu Yanqing's beautiful face indifferently and said, "Senior Wen, I want to see Yu Qianqiu, but you brought Mr. Nongzhu here. This is definitely not what I want to see. You have to pay the price for making a mistake. I'll give you two choices. You kill Mr. Nongzhu, and I won't kill Senior Lu. Or you don't kill Mr. Nongzhu, and I will kill Senior Lu. You can only choose one of the two choices. My patience is limited. If you don't make a choice within 10, you can only see Senior Lu's beautiful face under my devil fist in your next life." "Bastard." When Lanfeng roared sadly and was extremely emotional. Nongzhu waved her hand to stop when Lanfeng and sneered at Yin Juexing. "I don't think you dare to kill Lu Yanqing. You will definitely die if you kill her." "Oh, let's wait and see." Yin Juexing smiled faintly, stared at Wen Lanfeng, and slowly counted. 1, 2, 3 for yo. Yin Juexing, you stray dog. When did you learn to count with your fingers like a child? Are you bored, or are you out of your mind? A mocking voice interrupted Yin Juexing's counting. Everyone looked back and saw a figure flashed and landed beside Nongzhu. Who else could it be but Yu Qianqiu? Yu Qianqiu first glanced at Enchantress of Allure and Yinyu. The two women looked at him as if they didn't know him, which suddenly made a sinister smile appear on his face. When Nongzhu saw Yu Qianqiu, she subconsciously looked around to know who Yu Qianqiu's helper was, but she didn't find anyone. When Lanfeng showed a grateful face and turned to Yin Juexing and shouted, "Yin Juexing, Yu Qianqiu is here. Let them go." When Yin Juexing saw the bronze-skinned Yu Qianqiu with a head full of pigtails, he was speechless. He was stunned by his strange attire. He was stunned and ignored Wen Lanfeng. He smiled at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Finally, Brother Yu is here. I thought Brother Yu would hide his shell forever, but Brother Yu's pigtails are really interesting. Don't talk nonsense here." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand impatiently and interrupted, "I'm here. I don't have time to talk with you. Let them go. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." Yin Juexing immediately snorted and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you are not that stupid. Now your woman is in my hands. Why are you pretending to be fierce?" Yin Juexing grabbed the hair in his hand, and with a muffled hum from Lu Yanqing, he shouted, "Wen Lanfeng, if you don't want Lu Yanqing to die, kill Yu Qianqiu." Before the anxious Wen Lanfeng could reply, Yu Qianqiu had already shouted, "Kill your mother." He rushed over directly with a cyan broadsword in his hand. Lu Yanqing was the first to bear the brunt. Even Yin Juexing and Lu Yanqing were slashed together. Nongzhu was shocked. She didn't expect that this guy would directly attack without saying a word. He didn't even care about Lu Yanqing's life. When Lanfeng exclaimed, "Be merciful," not to mention them, Yin Juexing was also shocked. He didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would risk becoming enemies with Wen Lanfeng to kill Lu Yanqing. He quickly dragged Lu Yanqing back. How could he really kill Lu Yanqing now? If Lu Yanqing was dead now, what else could he use to threaten Wen Lanfeng and Nongzhu? He immediately said sternly, "Stop him." Old Ninth Exion's group of 4 quickly blocked Yu Qianqiu's path. Just at this time, on a small hillside not too far away, an explosion resounded. Soil and rocks flew everywhere, and before everyone could turn their heads to look, they only saw a blur in front of their eyes, and a figure flashed past. 2 of the 4 people who stopped Yu Qianqiu were suddenly missing. Enchantress and Yinyu had disappeared, leaving only Exion Laojiu and Exion Laojiu. What a fast speed! Who was this person? Whether it was Nongzhu or Yin Juexing who dragged Lu Yanqing back, they were all shocked. Absorbing Star's great technique. When the 2 sides crossed each other, they suddenly heard Yu Qianqiu's shout. 2 clouds of white smoke appeared in the air. Yu Qianqiu did not hesitate to sweep his broadsword at the 2 clouds of white smoke. In the blink of an eye, the white smoke followed Yu Qianqiu, who was holding a broadsword to chase Yin Juexing, while 2 dry wreckage fell from the air and smashed to the ground. Help me kill him. For this request, in the current situation, Wen Lanfeng could not wait to thank Yu Qianqiu. How could he kill Yu Qianqiu? He gritted his teeth and gently pressed his palm on Lu Yanqing's back. Lu Yanqing immediately passed out. Wen Lanfeng breathed a sigh of relief and said to Yu Qianqiu gratefully, "Thank you. Don't thank me. As long as she doesn't hate me, I will be thankful." Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "This is something that you could have done, Senior One. As a result, I have to be the bad guy. In the end, things are back to square one. But I still want to thank Senior One for delaying the time so that I can save the people I should save." Then he looked back at a mortal crocodile standing on the hillside with his hands behind his back. Charm and Yin Yu were unconscious at his feet. Wen Lanfeng, Nongzhu, and Yin Juexing all turned to look at him. They were all surprised and doubtful. This person had just rescued Temptress and Yin Yu, but none of them had seen his movements clearly. His cultivation was so high that it was beyond their imagination. There was no such person in the cultivation world. What made them wonder was that this person's hairstyle was exactly the same as Yu Qianqiu's. They did not know where Yu Qianqiu had invited this monster. Yin Juexing slowly turned his head and gritted his teeth. "Yu Qianqiu, you are ruthless. I'm not as ruthless as you. Are you so sure that I will let Lu Yanqing go?" If he did not realize it now, then he would not be Yin Juexing. Yu Qianqiu's action of killing 9th and 8th Exion had indeed caused him to make an absolute misjudgment, making him mistakenly think that Yu Qianqiu did not care about the life and death of the people of Lingfang Valley. But who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would be so ruthless at all costs to create such an illusion, and the ultimate goal was to save Lu Yanqing? Yu Qianqiu sneered and did not answer. In fact, he did not want to save Lu Yanqing and the others at all. He was even holding back his anger. If he really wanted to save them, with Immortal Crocodile's cultivation, it should not be a problem to save the others. But even he did not expect that Yin Juexing would give up Lu Yanqing at that moment. He would not do such a favor unless there was something wrong with his brain. Since he had already done the good deed, there was no need to tell Yin Juexing the truth. As a bad person, he naturally would not answer. "Cut the crap." Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, holding the saber in his hand, and said indifferently, "There is no point in saying more. Today is the day you die." Yin Juexing looked back at Nongzhu, who had cut off his escape route, and then looked at Wen Lanfeng, who was holding Lu Yanqing. His eyes finally fell on a mortal crocodile on the hillside. His pupils suddenly shrank. "Yu Qianqiu, if you have the ability, don't rely on others. You and I will fight to the death. Do you dare?" Chapter 775. He had been hiding in the ghost village for many years and had never shown his face in the turbulent cultivation circle. He had almost been forgotten by people. But Li Duxing's fame in those days was unquestionable. Like his name, he didn't care about other people's feelings. He fought alone in the cultivation circle where the strong preyed on the weak. He was invincible, and no one had ever been able to resist more than 10 moves from him. What he left was an invincible legend. Although he couldn't be one of the top 10 superiors with his cultivation at that time, no one would doubt that he had the strength to be one of the top 10 superiors, because people would compare the opponents he defeated with their own cultivation. Maybe everyone could defeat their opponents like him, but they all knew whether they could win within 10 moves. Everyone knew that once such a superior broke through to the last stage of Huashan Realm, some of the top 10 superiors would have to give way to him. However, after he really broke through to the last stage of Huashan Realm, he brazenly challenged Bai Changchun, the torture master of the Demon Ghost region and the first superior in the world. As a result, he was beaten into a cripple by Bai Changchun, and his cultivation plummeted. If it weren't for Lu Yanqing, the master of Lingfang Valley, who brought him back to life, he might have been killed. But for the lords of various countries, Li Duxing's defeat was glorious. After all, Bai Changchun was an invincible legend in the cultivation circle. He was the first person who had the courage to challenge Bai Changchun. It was this legendary figure who had once caused the lords of various countries to be secretly fearful. This legendary figure who had almost been forgotten by everyone suddenly appeared in front of everyone today. How could everyone not cry out in surprise? The most shocking thing was that most of the lords of various countries couldn't see through his cultivation, but Pei Fong and others who had reached the last stage of Huashan Realm could see that Li Duxing's cultivation had been restored to the last stage of Huashan Realm. The legendary Li Duxing is back. The lords of various countries suddenly thought of this, and even felt that it was not the right time to come. Something happened in Lingfang Valley, which had been spread by the civilians who had fled from Lingfang Valley. For the common people, it might just be because they saw someone kill someone in the Spirit Fang Valley, so they were shouting everywhere. However, for the cultivation world who had heard of this matter, it was no small matter. Why was there someone making trouble in the Spirit Fang Valley again? Everyone more or less owed Spirit Fang Valley a favor on the surface. Previously, when Yin Zhuixing caused trouble, it was because Bai Changchun was going to the Eastern Holy Land, so everyone had a reason not to make too big of a commotion. Now, that Spirit Fang Valley was in trouble. Even if it was because of the favor they owed, everyone had to come and see if there was anything they could do to help. However, whether they would sincerely help was another matter. That was also the reason why people rushed here at this time. But they didn't expect to see Li Duxing reappear. Everyone knew that Li Duxing had a close relationship with Lingfang Valley. Although they didn't know what happened to Lingfang Valley, they had a vague feeling that it wouldn't end well today. At the same time, he sighed endlessly. Lu Yanqing was Lu Yanqing. There were really a lot of flower protectors, and they were all experts. Since Pei Fong saw Li Duxing, the smile on his face froze, and his expression became gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, he squeezed out a smile again, walked over with a smile, and cupped one hand in the other before his chest. He said, "Brother Li, you have been away from the cultivation circle for many years. I didn't expect you to be more elegant than before. Congratulations." Li Duxing glanced at him and said indifferently, "Go away." Then he looked around and said in a low voice, "Who the hell is it? How dare you behave atrociously in Spirit Fang Valley? Get out." He showed an imposing manner that looked down on all heroes. Last time when Lingfang Valley was in trouble, he wanted to help. However, when Lu Yanqing healed his injury, she was afraid that he would go to Bai Changchun for revenge. She warned him that if Bai Changchun was still in the cultivation circle, he would not be allowed to show up there. As a result, he was restricted to the ghost village. Now he heard that Lingfang Valley was in trouble again, and Bai Changchun had gone to the Eastern Holy Land. The restriction of that year had been lifted, so he immediately came here. That was why the current scene happened. The smile on Pei Fong's face froze again when he was treated so disrespectfully in public. However, he was very flexible and didn't get angry at all. He just chuckled and rolled to the side without saying a word. The heroes were silent. Bing Qingzi frowned and looked at Yin Zhuixing beside him. Although he didn't see what happened, he had already guessed that it was Yin Zhuixing who did it. Actually, when he heard that someone was making trouble in Spirit Fang Valley, he immediately guessed that it was Yin Juexing. He was afraid that Yin Juexing would have an accident, so he came here immediately. As expected, Yin Juexing was really here. Did you do it? Bing Qingzi asked in a secret voice. Yin Juexing didn't deny it. Instead, he asked in a secret voice, "Who is that one-armed old man? Why haven't I heard of him? It seems that everyone is afraid of him." Bing Qingzi sighed slightly and told him about Li Duxing's background. Yin Juexing looked around with his eyes flickering. He knew that he was in trouble today. The change of the situation was completely out of his expectation. Although Lu Yanqing herself did not have much ability, but based on her medical skills, the background she established was not ordinary. Seeing that no one answered, Li Duxing stared at Wen Lanfeng, who was holding Lu Yanqing, and shouted, "Wen Lanfeng, what's going on? Who did this to Miss Lu?" Lu Yanqing's beautiful hair had turned into ragged short hair. She hadn't woken up yet, while Wen Lanfeng was haggard and looked very scary. Their abnormal behavior had already made everyone surprised and doubtful. It was hard to believe that someone could hurt Wen Lanfeng. But because Li Duxing was here, no one asked. Yu Qianqiu was also eye-catching, especially his ingenious braids. No one knew what was wrong with him, and he was looking at Li Duxing with a frightening Daqing saber and pestle. Why was this old guy here? When Lanfeng held his breath. He didn't want to show weakness in front of the lords, but Li Duxing kept asking, so he had to answer. He supported Lu Yanqing with one hand and slapped his chest with the other. With a pu sound, he spat out a black, frozen blood clot. It sizzled and dried up on the ground, causing everyone to be secretly shocked. Was Wen Lanfeng seriously injured? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, many of them had different expressions on their faces, and many of them had ulterior motives. Pei Fong's eyes were especially sharp, but when he saw Li Duxing, a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. When Lanfeng glanced at Lu Yanqing in his arms and pointed at Yin Juexing with a murderous look, everything was caused by this man. We can't let him run away. Everyone's eyes were on Yin Juexing. Li Duxing suddenly stared at Yin Juexing without saying anything. He turned into a shadow and directly shot at Yin Juexing without saying anything. Yin Juexing was slightly shocked, but Bing Qingzi beside him had already teleported to the air. The two shadows intertwined with each other. Bang bang, sounds were heard continuously, and the airwaves were rolling like tides. The two silhouettes that were entangled together were extremely fast. It was almost impossible to see the process of the fight clearly. With a loud bang, the airwaves collapsed. The two shadows quickly separated and appeared in the air at the same time. No one could tell who was the winner, but everyone present had a different view. Li Duxing only used one arm to fight with Bing Qingzi's arms. Obviously, he was more skillful. Bing Qingzi, it seems that you want to intervene in this matter. Li Duxing snorted and then shouted, "Again! Wait!" Bing Qingzi waved his hand to stop him. "Brother Li, wait. It's not too late to take action after figuring out the matter." Then he flashed back to Yin Juexing. Yin Juexing immediately cupped his hands to Li Duxing and said, "Senior Li, please understand. Outsiders can't tell the truth." Could it be that Yu Qianqiu had been hiding his cultivation on purpose all along? It should be known that other things could be faked, but teleportation could only be used when one's cultivation had reached a certain level. Otherwise, it couldn't be faked at all. Obviously, Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was definitely not at the early stage of crossing calamity. At a low estimate, he was at least at the early stage of crossing calamity. But how could someone at the early stage of crossing calamity dare to provoke Pei Fong at the early stage of Huashan realm? Yin Juexing's pupils suddenly shrank. He and Bing Qingzi looked at each other in shock. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng were also shocked by Yu Qianqiu's sudden teleportation. Even Immortal Crocodile's eyes flickered on the hillside. "Fatty Pei, I'm asking you a question. How dare you not answer?" Yu Qianqiu asked coldly. Pei Fong's usually smiling fat face was expressionless at this moment. There was a faint anger in his eyes. He wanted to explode, but he wasn't sure if Yu Qianqiu had the real ability. He rarely did things that he wasn't sure of, but this time he really wanted to take a gamble. He slowly glanced at his allies and gritted his teeth. The Monster Ghost Territory's Torture Master is asking me a question. Since the two of you are my allies, please give me some ideas. The meaning of his words was obvious. They were allies, and it was time to advance and retreat together. Let's make a decision together. Qi Jiujuan and Ouyangda looked at each other hesitantly. They weren't sure how to handle this matter. However, Yu Qianqiu seemed to be insatiable. He glanced at the three indifferently and said, "Since we're allies, we should be punished together." The three were shocked. Yu Qianqiu's words made it clear that he was going to make a move. The three reacted quickly and quickly retreated, keeping a safe distance of more than 10 meters from Yu Qianqiu. The blue-faced demon saber, deadly claws, and Junlin's ruler were quickly retrieved from their storage bags. The three pairs of eyes stared at Yu Qianqiu, maintaining a high degree of vigilance. Although they were all ranked among the top 10 experts in the cultivation world, they were still extremely nervous at this moment. After all, they were about to fight the Monster Ghost Territory's Torture Master. The prestige of the Monster Ghost Territory's Torture Masters was too great, especially the previous Torture Master, Bai Changchun, who had left an indelible and terrible shadow in their hearts. It would be a lie to say that they weren't afraid. The atmosphere in Spirit Fragrance Valley instantly became extremely tense. Everyone's eyes were on the four people who were confronting each other. The lords who were close to them quickly retreated, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. Chapter 777. Nongzhu was the one who was most nervous. He didn't know what Yu Qianqiu was trying to do. How dare he provoke Fatty Pei and the other two? Pei Fong's words didn't seem to push him to the point of making a move. However, when Yu Qianqiu showed his teleportation just now, Nongzhu realized that he couldn't figure out how strong he was. However, he knew that this guy wasn't one to suffer losses. There must be a reason for him to do this. Although he said that, Nongzhu was still on high alert. He was ready to save them if he found anything wrong. The entire Ling Fong Valley was extremely quiet. Only a gentle breeze was blowing. Everyone's attention was focused on the few people who were confronting each other. All of them looked expectant. To the lords of the various nations, it didn't matter who won or lost. It would be even better if a few of them died. It would be best if all of them died. Be it the Demon Ghost Realm's Torture Master or the three late-stage deity transformation cultivators, all of these people who had been suppressing them all died. Of course, to Yin Zhuixing, if one of the four had to die, he would definitely choose Yu Qianqiu. As the atmosphere froze, everyone's eyes moved. Yu Qianqiu slowly raised his hand to meet the three's palm. He snorted coldly and said, "How dare you fight with me, the torture envoy? You got guts." The three of them immediately felt an aura lock on them. They looked at each other, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across their faces. Since they had been forced to this point, there was no way out. Pei Fong's fat face trembled ferociously. "Since the torture envoy is giving us face, then we won't accept guests." He stopped abruptly before he finished speaking. His gaze moved down and slowly looked at his hand. He was scared out of his wits when he saw it. His expression changed drastically. He finally found the reason why his hand suddenly became empty. The blue beauty demon blade that he relied on to become famous was nowhere to be seen. A layer of fine dust shining with blue light floated down and covered his feet. Qi Jujuan also felt that his hand was empty. He glanced at it and his whole body froze. The Monarch Descent ruler was gone. There was only a layer of golden dust dancing under the sun. Ouyang Da's eyes widened as he raised his hands in disbelief. The pitch-black, deadly claws that covered his arms suddenly slid down like quicksand. He waved his arms in an attempt to stop them, but all he caught were two globs of black powder. The faces of the three of them instantly turned deathly pale, and they froze on the spot, motionless. Air rushed in and out of their throats, and a sense of panic spread to their faces. The three of them only felt that they had been locked on by the other's aura, but none of them were able to sense how the other had made his move. The unknown power was the most terrifying. The power that could not be seen, could not be heard, and could not be comprehended was the most frightening because it exceeded everyone's imagination. Under the sunlight, blue, gold, and black dust danced in the air, reflecting the enchanting and gorgeous colors. However, it was this gorgeous and enchanting color that sent chills down everyone's spines. It was as if they could smell the scent of death. Without a sound, the spirit treasures that the three soul formation final stage cultivators relied on to make a name for themselves were gone just like that, turning into drifting dust. How was this possible? How powerful must one be to be able to do this? Everyone even suspected that the spirit treasures of Pei Fong and the other two had been tampered with, but they all knew that this was impossible. The spirit treasures that the three of them relied on to make a name for themselves had always been with them, and they never left their bodies. It was impossible for anyone to have the opportunity to tamper with them. Fear, disbelief, confusion, and a series of other complicated emotions crawled onto everyone's faces. Everyone originally thought that Yu Qianshou's braided hair was a little comical, but now that they looked at the back of his unmoving figure, they felt a little suffocated. Although he was just standing there quietly, he made everyone feel like they were looking up to a tall mountain, giving off an unfathomable sense of oppression. At first, some people were still suspicious of why Bai Changchun would pass the position of Demon Ghost Region Torture Envoy to Yu Qianshou, but now, all their doubts were easily resolved. No one had any doubts about Bai Changchun's decision. Was there anyone more suitable than him to take over the position of Demon Ghost Region Torture Envoy? His mysterious strength was enough to explain everything. Immortal Crocodile's eyes flickered. When Lanfeng was shocked, Nongzhu was dumbfounded, and Li Duxing stared at Yu Qianshou with his sharp eyes. This person was the new torture envoy after Bai Changchun. Yan Zhuixing clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles turned white, and his tightly bitten lips oozed a trace of blood. He silently told himself that this was absolutely impossible, and that there must be something fishy behind it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been beaten to the point of vomiting blood when they fought. A trace of desolation flashed across Bing Chengzi's face. He silently looked back at Yan Zhuixing and sighed helplessly in his heart. Pei Fong and the other two were still in a daze. They even thought that if Yu Qianshou's palm was not aimed at the spirit treasures in their hands, but at themselves, what would the consequences be? A very terrible consequence. Pei Fong smiled bitterly in his heart. He should have known that Bai Changchun would not pass the position of Demon Ghost Region Torture Envoy to an incompetent person. He had been calculating his whole life. Why couldn't he hold back? He had hesitated just now, too. But Yu Qianshou was pressing on. Obviously, he didn't intend to let him go. In that case, the three exchanged a look as if they had a tacit understanding, and a hint of fierceness flashed in their eyes. They could survive in the cultivation world until now not only by being flexible and able to endure what others could not, but also by being ruthless and daring to fight. At this moment, everyone's pupils suddenly shrank, and they saw the three disappear at the same time. But just when the three seemed to have moved, Yu Qianshou seemed to have known in advance, and directly sank into the ground with a swoosh. Like a stone sinking into the sea, he suddenly sank into the ground, and there was not even a ripple. Everyone thought that they were seeing things, but they really saw the ground sink, and Yu Qianshou directly sank into the ground. But the strange thing was that after Yu Qianshou disappeared, the ground was still the same, and no trace could be seen. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, three silhouettes suddenly appeared and converged at the position where Yu Qianshou had disappeared. Boom! An explosive sound was heard, and the earth quaked. In an instant, the earth and stones collapsed, and the airwaves crazily destroyed the surroundings. Relying on their profound cultivation base, they were barely able to withstand the aftershock of the explosion. However, the surrounding spirit herbs and plants were immediately uprooted by the surging airwaves. The bamboo sheds and abodes in the Spirit Fragrance Valley were also destroyed in an instant. Dust and smoke rose in all directions, and a huge pit with a diameter of tens of meters appeared in the central area. The terrible thing was not its width, but its bottomless depth. The sides of the pit were covered with cracks, and some of them were even hundreds of meters long, as if a big earthquake had occurred. The power of three late-stage soul formation experts working together was indeed extraordinary. No one knew whether Yu Qianshou, who had drilled into the ground, was dead or alive. Pei Fong and the other two stood back to back at the mouth of the pit, and their eyes vigilantly scanned the inside and around the pit. They even used their divine sense to search 3 feet into the ground, not daring to miss any movement underground. However, there was a limit to how deep their divine sense could penetrate the ground. They didn't find any movement in the shallow layer, but it was difficult to spy on the deeper layer. At this moment, a majestic and terrifying aura rose from the deep pit into the sky and directly enveloped the 3 of them. The 3 of them couldn't help but shiver. Pei Fong gritted his teeth and shouted, "He's down there, let's fight." The 3 of them simultaneously flashed into the pit, and many people immediately flashed into the air, wanting to see the movement of the battle below. However, a terrifying thing happened. The entire ground suddenly surged like waves, and the tens of meters wide hole instantly merged together. The ground seemed to have never been damaged, and it returned to its original flat state. Everyone was shocked. They had never seen such a strange thing before. At this moment, the entire ground suddenly trembled, and it seemed restless. It was as if a volcano was about to erupt, and they could faintly hear rumbling sounds coming from below. Clearly, the 3 of them were already fighting underground. As everyone was shocked, the tremors underground became stronger, and the rumbling sounds became louder and louder. It was getting closer and closer to the surface, and it sounded very restless, as if something was trying to break free from the ground and break out. Everyone looked at each other. They couldn't imagine how intense the battle below was, and why the tremors were so frequent and violent. On the small hill, Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes were still flashing, but Nongzhu was extremely nervous. She secretly cursed these guys for fighting underground, and she didn't even know how to help them at the critical moment. Little did she know that Pei Fong and the other 2 immediately felt that they had been tricked as soon as they entered the ground. The entire ground seemed to have come alive, instantly sealing off their escape route and burying them more than 200 meters underground. It would have been fine if they were just buried, but the ground was still trembling violently, as if it was going to crush them into powder. The 3 of them had never encountered such a strange thing. In their panic, they quickly gathered together, desperately releasing their vigor shields to resist the huge pressure coming from their surroundings. Outsiders could not imagine how much pressure there was under 200 meters, especially when the ground was moving violently. It was a huge force comparable to the movement of the Earth's crust. It was so strong that it almost crushed the 3's vigor shields. Fortunately, their cultivation was high, and they could barely resist it. The 3 of them attacked frantically in all directions, fearing that they would be ambushed by Yu Qianshou, but they couldn't even see Yu Qianshou's shadow. The more the 3 of them fought, the more terrified they became. They realized that no matter how strong their attacks were, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, without any effect. The thick ground around them had just been blasted open, but it was pressing down again. They had never thought that the usually silent and stiff ground would be so terrifying when it moved. It made them feel as if they had nowhere to exert their strength, and the 3 of them felt like they were buried alive. Obviously, it was not a long-term solution to continue wasting time here, and they would definitely die. Pei Fong shouted in shock and fear, "We can't waste any more time. Let's go up and fight our way out first." The 3 of them immediately used their powerful cultivation to attack indiscriminately, breaking through all the way up. Chapter 778. Yu Qianshou, who was hiding underground in the distance, did not dare to approach them. These 3 fellows were able to survive in the cultivation world until now, so they were not to be trifled with. Every move they made had the power to split mountains and split the earth. It was very terrifying, and it was not something he could block with his cultivation. He could only use the earth spell to control the earth to squeeze and trample on these 3 guys. He was going to torture them half to death first, After discovering that these three guys were desperately trying to escape, Yu Qianzhou was immediately displeased. How could he let them escape so easily? He hadn't finished creating the shock effect yet. In fact, with Yu Qianzhou's current cultivation, although he couldn't compare to those experts at the soul formation final stage, the distance that his chi could spread and the speed at which he could lock onto his target, together with the 5-element spell, were enough. He probably couldn't find any opponents in the cultivation world. This was also the reason why he dared to provoke Pei Fong and the others. If he really wanted to kill Pei Fong and the others immediately, he wouldn't have needed to act cool and use the gold absolute. He could have just used the Absorbing Star's great technique to deal with these three guys immediately. The key point was that he wanted to show his power in front of everyone today. He wanted to show them his awesome methods and let them know that he, the torture master of the Demon Ghost region, was not to be trifled with, and they had better behave themselves in the future. This was called deterrence. It would be best if he could shock them once, twice, and thrice, so that they would tremble with fear and completely give up the idea of going against him. Otherwise, how would he have the energy to deal with them one by one in the future? Speaking of which, he now had the ability to kill Pei Fong and the others. But if Pei Fong and the others escaped, it would be difficult for him to catch up to them with the cultivation of Pei Fong and the others. He had finally trapped the three of them underground. How could he let them escape so easily? No matter what, he had to torture them until they were almost out of breath, and then let them out so that everyone could see his performance. He definitely couldn't let them escape now. Pei Fong and the others, who were bombarding and breaking out of the encirclement, immediately felt that the surrounding earth was wriggling more and more violently, and the resulting pressure was also increasing. The three of them immediately felt a fatal threat, and in panic, they used all their cultivation to break out of the encirclement. Yu Qianzhou immediately realized that it was difficult to trap them. He cursed in his heart. He couldn't play anymore, so he had to kill them. Pei Fong and the other two suddenly felt the pressure around them decrease greatly. Pei Fong immediately shouted, "Go!" The three of them were extremely vigilant. They first launched a series of attacks in all directions, abandoning the threat. Then, they immediately seized the opportunity and launched 6 palms at the top of their heads. Bang! Bang! The earth trembled violently, and a large hole suddenly exploded in the ground. Dirt and rocks flew everywhere, and 3 figures quickly flashed out. Everyone was thinking to themselves that they had finally fought. How was the battle going? Suddenly, an angry shout came from below. "Don't run! Absorbing Star's great art!" As soon as the 4 words "Absorbing Star's great technique" were uttered, a few people in the crowd had a particularly big reaction. As expected, the 3 silhouettes exploded into 3 clouds of white mist with a bang and shot back into the deep pit below like 3 flowing clouds and sharp arrows. The 3 silhouettes that rushed out did not stop and rushed straight to the sky. From the pit below, a figure quickly chased after them and forcefully inserted himself in between the 3. The figure flickered, and Yu Qianzhou quickly took the storage bags from the waist of the 3 people, letting the 3 exhausted corpses fall freely. Perhaps it was because they had been drained of water, the 3 corpses floated down, giving everyone enough time to appreciate them. There was dead silence all around, and everyone revealed a look of disbelief and horror. The 3 corpses were like skeletons, and their original appearance could no longer be seen. However, from their clothes, they could vaguely tell that they were Pei Fong and the other 2 people. Pei Fong's fat body was now as thin as firewood. It was also at this moment that countless divine senses couldn't help but quickly scan the 3 corpses and immediately withdrew after finding no signs of life. The 3 corpses fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. They were really smashed to pieces. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the wreckage on the ground for a long time, unable to move away. They suddenly felt like a dream. They couldn't believe that Pei Fong, Qi Jiujuan, and Ouyangde, the 3 masters at the late Huashan stage, died like this. In that instant, it felt as though Yu Qianzhou had forced Pei Fong and the other 2 to flee. In the end, the three of them still couldn't escape from Yu Qianzhou's murderous hands. With a single move from Yu Qianzhou, the three of them were instantly killed. Too powerful. Nongzhu was the most speechless one. He was a witness to Yu Qianzhou's success in practicing the so-called absorbing stars great technique. At that time, in the embassy of Baiwan in Daong Kingdom, it was he who gave advice to Bai Changchun, which led to the success of the absorbing stars great technique. He witnessed the power of the absorbing stars great technique for the first time, and it could be said that he was the first person to see the absorbing stars great technique used for the first time. At that time, because Yu Qianzhou didn't know how powerful the absorbing stars great technique was, he begged him to let him try it. At this time, Nongzhu still had a cold sweat on her back when she thought of it. Even Pei Fong and the others couldn't resist it. If she had agreed at that time, wouldn't she have become a dry corpse? Fortunately, she was wise and refused. Nongzhu was the first to look at Yu Qianzhou in the air. She saw that Yu Qianzhou had revealed his true colors and was quickly checking the things in the 3 storage bags. Nongzhu's expression twitched. As soon as Yu Qianzhou stuffed the 3 storage bags into his chest, his eyes immediately met with Nongzhu's, and the joy on his face immediately became serious. You overestimate yourself. A disdainful snort came from the air. Everyone's eyes were fixed on that direction, and their complicated expressions were full of awe. Yu Qianzhou slowly floated down. The ground below seemed to be preparing for his landing. It surged like waves, swallowing the debris on the ground, and the ruptures that had been blasted out also merged together. A mound of earth tens of meters high instantly rose from the center of Lingfang Valley, steadily supporting him as he fell. Such a scene that was almost like an illusion made all the practitioners think that they had seen a miracle. They were all dumbfounded and looked up at Yu Qianzhou on the top of the mound of earth tens of meters high. Yu Qianzhou was very satisfied with the reaction of the crowd, but not very satisfied. His eyes inadvertently came into contact with the blazing sun in the sky, and his heart moved. The metal elements were quietly released into the sky, and then gradually condensed in the process of falling. Little by little, they scattered, and the scene was like a golden flower falling from the sky. Behind him gradually condensed a big golden wheel that was as magnificent as a golden rainbow, and his whole body was faintly glowing with golden light. The big golden wheel was like a rainbow, magnificent and majestic, as if it had fallen from the sky, shining with a dreamy golden light. In the big golden wheel, Yu Qianzhou was high up in the sky, and under the illumination of the sun, his whole body was covered with a layer of hazy golden light, looking extremely holy and holy. The whole Lingfang Valley also seemed solemn in an instant. Such a scene suddenly made everyone think of the transcendent's golden body in the secular temple, and it almost made them want to worship it. Everyone told themselves from the bottom of their hearts that this was an illusion. It must be an illusion. But the Yu Qianzhou standing on the mound was so sacred and inviolable, and no one could think of any way to imitate him to such a magical extent. In addition, they already had a sense of awe in their hearts, and subconsciously thought that this might really be a miracle or an auspicious sign from the heavens when one's cultivation had reached a certain realm. One must know that this was very possible, just like when one's cultivation broke through to the tribulation passing stage and had to suffer a lightning tribulation. The group of people below were really shocked by this scene, and all of them were speechless with exaggerated expressions. Some people even suspected that this was a strange phenomenon when one's cultivation had reached the realm of ascension. It was very possible that Yu Qianzhou could kill 3 experts at the final stage of Huashan realm by himself. Damn it! Is this considered as creating a god? Yu Qianzhou muttered in his heart, but on the surface, he still looked dignified, quietly enjoying the reverent and slightly pious eyes of the group below. Now he finally understood why those bodhisattvas in the temples who held high positions but did not do anything were not afraid of wearing a straight face for a long time. It was because it felt so good to be able to look down on all living beings, be superior, and have people respect you. Now he even thought that it was okay to do more dirty things in the future, as long as he put the image of a bodhisattva on the table. Regardless of the level of cultivation, if there was anyone present who felt that something was wrong, it would be Nongzhu, who knew very well about Yu Qianzhou's pretense. Immortal Crocodile, who was on the hillside, was also looking at Yu Qianzhou, dumbfounded. He was speechless. Although he did not know how Yu Qianzhou had created such a magical phenomenon, he was sick of it. He felt that this guy was really shameless and could do anything. Nongzhu looked at the glorious image of Yu Qianzhou, and her expression twitched endlessly. She felt a toothache. She sneered and said, "I didn't expect that killing 3 experts at the final stage of tribulation passing would make you look like a gold plate. How much longer do you want to play? Do you want me to build a temple for you and place you inside to receive incense and worship?" Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou's interest was greatly reduced, and he was no longer in the mood to pretend. He immediately glanced at the people below and said loudly, "Who else doesn't like me? Come at me if you don't like me. I'll still say the same thing. I'll fight you one-on-one at any time." His voice echoed in the valley. Coupled with his transcendent's golden body, it made him look even more solemn, sacred, and inviolable. He had easily killed Pei Fong, Qi Jiujuan, and Ouyangde, 3 experts at the final stage of soul transformation. Who would dare to provoke him? At this time, in the hearts of the people, he was fully deserving of the title of Torture Master of the Demon Ghost region. This battle had completely established his top position in the cultivation world. Everyone sighed in their hearts. The Demon Ghost region had lasted for a long time, and Yu Qianzhou, the former Torture Master, had once again secured the throne of the world's top expert. Humph! Yu Qianzhou looked around and snorted coldly. He said, "No one answered? Those who are irrelevant, go back immediately. If you're late, don't leave. Stay in Lingfeng Valley for the rest of your life." The lords of the various countries looked at each other and immediately flew into the sky like birds and beasts. Since they couldn't afford to provoke him, they would naturally hide. Chapter 779. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few people left in the Lingfeng Valley. Yu Qianzhou was high up. Immortal Crocodile was standing on the hillside where Enchantress and Yinyu had fainted when Lanfeng was holding Lu Yanqing, who was in a coma, and Nongzhu and Li Duxing were staring at Yu Qianzhou on the top of the mound. Bing Qingzi and Yin Juixing looked gloomy. Others could leave, but they knew they couldn't. Yin Juixing clenched his fists and stared at Yu Qianzhou, gnashing his teeth. "Yu Qianzhou, you've been fooling me." His heart was filled with rage as he spat out each word. He now deeply suspected that Yu Qianzhou was not as unbearable as he had seen him to be. Instead, he had been playing a game of cat and mouse. As long as he jumped up, Yu Qianzhou would come out and slap him. At first, he couldn't figure it out. But then he remembered that Yu Qianzhou already knew that he practiced the demonic book and knew the weakness of the blood escape. But he didn't make it public. It was obvious that he wanted to play with him slowly. This hatred could be said to have no end. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He didn't know when he had fooled this little devil. While thinking, he put away the big golden wheel and the transcendent's golden body behind him. The mound that was tens of meters high quickly melted into the ground, and he also fell with the height of the mound. Before he spoke, someone already couldn't help but want to get even with Yin Juixing. After listening to Wen Lanfeng's narration, Li Duxing suddenly turned back and shouted coldly, "You don't need to know whether I'm fooling you or not. Go to hell." He turned into a shadow and stretched out his claws to attack Yin Juixing. Bing Qingzi blocked it without hesitation. The 2 experts at the late stage of Huashan Realm collided with each other again. Shockwaves suddenly rose and exploded. The 2 of them turned into countless afterimages as they quickly fought against each other. Every fierce exchange of blows was shocking to the hearts of the spectators. Everyone watched the battle silently and found that Bing Qingzi seemed to be fighting desperately. It was the first time for those who knew him to see him like this. Perhaps it was because he knew that he had been implicated by Yin Juexing and several soul formation final stage experts were eyeing him with hostility. It would be very difficult for him to have a good ending today. Thus, he decided to go all out. Since it was highly likely that he would not be able to keep his life, then he would protect his reputation. Bang! Both of them retreated violently at the same time. They hadn't even stopped retreating when they turned into afterimages and crazily collided with each other. Darking Palm. It was Bing Qingzi's voice. The temperature around suddenly dropped, and sporadic snowflakes suddenly fell. A wave of palm shadows blew the falling snowflakes and covered Li Duxing, who was shooting over. Humph! Li Duxing snorted and shouted, 1,000 miles of solitude. His gray shadow, like a flowing light, flashed into the palm shadows all over the sky and danced in the air. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the two of them were forced back again. The palm shadows that filled the sky between the two of them slowly disappeared. The scattered snowflakes silently moistened the ground, and the surrounding temperature slowly returned to normal. The Spirit Fragrance Valley was completely silent. Both of them stood still and stared at each other from a distance of nearly 100 meters. Li Duxing looked proud. The claw of his only arm was holding a piece of his chest, which was covered with blood. Bing Qingzi looked at his chest in silence. The blood that gushed out quickly dyed his whole body. The bright red color was extremely dazzling on his white robe. In an instant, the blood that gushed out was forcibly stopped by his profound cultivation. However, there was a big hole on his chest. His beating heart and expanding lungs could be seen clearly. The appearance of his chest was no longer concealed. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng looked at each other in dismay. Yu Qianqiu also secretly stuck out his tongue. Like 1,000 miles of solitude is really powerful. The combination of speed and strength is almost perfect. I'm afraid that few people in the world can rival him with this one move. No wonder it's said that few people can fight with him for more than 10 moves. Moreover, he only has one arm. If he has 2 arms, it must be even more amazing. Sure enough, a madman must have the capital to be arrogant. Hee. Bing Qingzi suddenly smiled with a bleak expression. He shook his head and said, I've long heard that Li Duxing's 1,000 miles of solitude is known for its speed and invincible. Today I see that it really lives up to its reputation. I didn't lose unjustly. Are you being merciful? In fact, Li Duxing could have killed him with one move just now. But for some reason, he was merciful. Li Duxing pointed at Yin Juexing with his only arm and said, I want to kill him, not you. Bing Qingzi laughed bitterly and said, You're famous for killing. You've washed thousands of miles with blood. I've never heard of anyone who fought with you surviving. This doesn't seem to be your style, does it? Li Duxing snorted coldly and didn't answer. Wen Lanfeng was probably the only one who knew the reason. When Li Duxing was seriously injured by Bai Changchun and was dying, it was Lu Yanqing who saved him. Lu Yanqing was so kind that she couldn't stand fighting and killing. After saving such a god of killing, Lu Yanqing had repeatedly restrained Li Duxing not to kill indiscriminately. Li Duxing's life was picked up by Lu Yanqing. In order to appreciate her kindness, he respected Lu Yanqing as Miss and obeyed her orders. Thus, it became his first honorable business to give up killing. Later, Lu Yanqing felt the miserable fate of those individual cultivators in the cultivation world, so she ordered Li Duxing to live in the ghost village to intimidate all the individual cultivators and give them a place to settle down. Bing Qingzi didn't take it seriously when he didn't answer. He turned to Yin Juexing and sighed, I've died once. My life was given by others. From today on, my mission has been completed. I can't help you anymore. After saying that, there was a faint smile on his face, as if he was relieved. Seeing Bing Qingzi's chest dripping with blood, Yin Juexing roared with his eyes wide open. Master, I'll avenge you. A black, evil spirit emerged from his body at once. He opened his mouth and spat out 7 red lights, which immediately condensed the black, evil spirit into 7 vivid flying snakes with ferocious faces. The scene was extremely weird. Among the people present, only Yu Qianqiu had seen it before. It was the first time for the others to see it. Their eyes flickered. The thing that Li Duxing was holding loosened and fell to the ground. He wasn't in a hurry to fight. He squinted and said, "Is this the so-called demonic skill? It's really unique. I'd like to have a taste of it today. Boy, don't hesitate to fight." Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and flashed to the middle of the two. He looked at Li Duxing indifferently and said, "Senior Li, you'd better take a break." Li Duxing snorted coldly without expressing his opinion. He looked at Yin Zhuixing as if to say, "You have to see who he wants to fight with." "Yu Qianqiu, get out of my way." Yin Zhuixing roared, "I'll settle the score with you sooner or later. Are you out of your mind?" Yu Qianqiu looked back at Yin Zhuixing indifferently and said, "Yin Zhuixing, it's all because of you that your master ended up like this today. You can't blame others. We all cheat and kill each other in the cultivation circle. Today, you are destined to have no revenge. Don't talk nonsense about revenge. Now, it's time to end things between you and me. I'm a man who will do great things. I don't have time to tangle with you." Yin Zhuixing didn't talk nonsense anymore. He waved his hand and shouted angrily, "Kill!" 7 flying snakes shot over like arrows. Yu Qianqiu raised his palm, and 7 balls of azure flames flew out, just in time to catch the 7 flying snakes that were rushing over. It was the nature of the flying snakes to escape when they met their nemesis. The 7 cyan flames were wriggling violently and changing into various shapes. The 7 cyan flames flew all over Ling Fong Valley. The things inside seemed to want to break free. However, ever since Yu Qianqiu started cultivating the Guiyuan sword art, even though his cultivation level wasn't high, his divine sense's ability to divide and control things was simply unparalleled in this world. Perhaps even Bai Changchun wouldn't necessarily be stronger than him. If he didn't try, he wouldn't know. Once he tried, he would definitely give others a shock. This was what it meant to not waste a skill that was painstakingly trained. There would be a day when it would be useful. Within the 7 cyan flames, there were anxious hissing sounds coming for the cyan flames. They were anxious to break free from the cyan flames that were their nemesis. However, the cyan flames followed it like a shadow. It flew everywhere and burned its body crazily. It wasn't afraid of how powerful it was. Everything had its vanquisher, with the sharp eyesight of everyone present. Anyone could see that the flying snake was a living creature, and the 7 balls of green flames were completely controlled by Yu Qianqiu. Under such circumstances, it was easy to imagine how difficult it was to control the green flames to burn the flying snake. Everyone gasped, and they were shocked in their hearts. What a formidable soul-splitting control technique. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng looked at each other, unable to hide the shock in their eyes. Li Duxing's eyes flickered, and Immortal Crocodile looked solemn. Facing the entanglement of the flying snakes and the cyan flames, Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at them. He stood there calmly and said indifferently, "Yin Zhuixing, do you want to fight with me with such little ability?" Yin Zhuixing's face instantly turned pale. He gritted his teeth and stared at Yu Qianqiu. With such a powerful control skill, he had been hiding his cultivation. He could feel how painful the devilish spirit snakes in the fire were. Under the burning of the cyan flames, the 7 snakes' resistance was sharply declining, and their bodies were shrinking rapidly. If he let it go on, the 7 traces of spirit separated from his primordial spirit would be damaged, and the consequences of the primordial spirit injury would be terrible. Without any hesitation, he quickly performed the magic light sweeping shadow and rushed over like a flowing light. He waved his fist and shouted angrily, "Devil Fist!" In terms of speed, without teleportation, Yu Qianqiu was definitely not as fast as Yin Zhuixing's magic light sweeping shadow. However, before his opponent moved, he had already predicted the enemy's movement. His figure flashed into the sky, and the two brushed past each other. Yin Zhuixing quickly turned around and bounced up in the air, chasing after Yu Qianqiu and punching him. However, as soon as Yu Qianqiu bounced up, he had already turned around and slapped Yin Zhuixing with his palm. He shouted calmly, "Absorbing Star's great skill. A cloud of white mist burst out of Yan Zhuixing's body and was absorbed into Yu Qianzhou's palm like a flowing cloud. At the same time, dense cyan flying swords burst out of Yu Qianzhou's sleeves, directly smashing Yan Zhuixing's shriveled body into pieces. Chapter 780. Bing Qingzi, who was watching the battle, saw Yan Zhuixing being blasted into pieces by Yu Qianzhou. His body swayed a little, and he was on the verge of collapse. His pale face instantly became even paler. However, Yu Qianzhou seemed to be afraid that Yan Zhuixing would come back to life. The green fire flying swords in his sleeves kept shooting out, chasing after the falling body. In an instant, a large pit was created on the ground by the rapidly shooting flying swords with a crackling sound. Yu Qianzhou jumped to the edge of the pit, without any intention of stopping. The flying swords rose and fell rapidly, bombarding the pit. I was afraid that you wouldn't die. I was afraid that you wouldn't die. Live for this daddy to see again. Live for this daddy to see again. Yu Qianzhou stood by the edge of the pit and muttered in a seemingly deranged manner, while controlling the countless flying swords with blue flames. Li Duxing, who didn't know what was going on, looked back at Wen Lanfeng in disbelief. He seemed to be asking Yu Qianzhou what kind of hatred he had for Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing had been smashed into pieces, but he still didn't let him go. That was too much. Wen Lanfeng, who was holding Lu Yanqing, was speechless. Immortal Crocodile, who was on the hillside, turned to look at the sky. He really didn't want to see it anymore. He sighed in his heart. What a talent. Nongzhu flashed to Yu Qianzhou's side and craned her head to look into the pit. Yan Zhuixing had already been smashed into pieces, and the pit was filled with splashing mud. There was no wreckage at all. Nongzhu asked suspiciously. He should be dead, right? Yu Qianzhou said seriously. It doesn't matter. It's not a bad thing to keep bombarding. This guy's demonic skill is very evil. I've experienced it myself. Hearing this, Nongzhu's face twitched. She looked at the others and found that Bing Chengzi, who had decided not to intervene, seemed to be angry. She coughed and said, Okay, it's almost time. Can you maintain the demeanor of a torturer of the demon ghost region? Okay, got it. I'll stop immediately. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and narrowed his eyes to size them up. He looked like he was determined to exterminate them. As Nongzhu had expected, Bing Chengzi roared crazily. Yu Qianzhou, don't go too far, or you will be punished by heaven. After all, Yan Zhuixing was his disciple. Seeing someone torturing a corpse like that, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Yu Qianzhou turned back to look at him, his eyebrows raised. Just as he was about to explode in anger, he noticed that the others were looking at him as if he was a monster. Pursing his lips, he waved his sleeves, and the green flame flying swords that were shuttling through the pit instantly disappeared into his sleeves. He patted off the soil that had splashed on his palms and was about to use the earth element to bury the deep pit. However, he frowned and glanced at the pit. He still felt a little uneasy after thinking about it. With a flick of his finger, a green light shot into the deep pit. Nongzhu even stuck her head out to the edge of the pit curiously, wanting to see what he had shot into the pit. Suddenly, with a buzz, a fierce green flame soared into the sky. Nongzhu was so scared that she immediately teleported away. She pulled her hair and shouted, Are you crazy? Yu Qianzhou looked at her with disdain, as if to say, Who asked you to stick your head out there? Then he waved his hand and pointed at the raging flame, suppressing the fire and concentrating the high temperature in the pit. Even the scorching sun in the sky couldn't take away the radiance of the resplendent azure light. Everyone was speechless as they looked at the azure flames burning in the pit. They couldn't hide the disdain in their eyes as they looked at Yu Qianzhou. Hiss! Suddenly, a few intense and sharp hisses were heard in the Lingfang Valley. It was as if metal was rubbing against each other, making everyone's hair stand on end. They quickly looked towards the source of the sound and saw that the 7 balls of green flame had stopped dancing. Obviously, the flying snakes inside had been completely refined. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand, and the 7 balls of green flame went into his sleeve. At this time, he was also slightly relieved. Just as he was about to retract the raging green flame in the pit, the fire in the pit suddenly soared into the sky. Everyone thought that Yu Qianshou was going to play some tricks again, but they saw Yu Qianshou waving his arms towards the pit. His face was red, and the veins on his neck were bulging, as if he was forcibly controlling the green flame to suppress something. Nongzhu frowned. She was the first to notice that something was wrong. Immortal Crocodile suddenly looked back. While everyone was surprised, they suddenly saw the green flame spew out of the pit like an explosion. Yu Qianshou spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated a few steps. Nongzhu flashed to hold him, and suddenly turned back to stare at the pit that forced out the green flame. A majestic, ancient, and oppressive aura suddenly erupted from the pit, instantly shocking everyone present and causing their hearts to tremble. They saw a ball of black light slowly rising from the deep pit, and there seemed to be a little person in the middle. The black light hung in the air, emitting a thick and ancient aura that shocked the common people. It was like a domineering king looking down on the world. Such a powerful and terrifying aura oppressed everyone so much that they could not even think of resisting. Immortal Crocodile looked at the mysterious black light in shock, and his blank eyes seemed to pull his thoughts back to the distant past. Motherf asterisk cur. That dog is here again, bah. Yu Qianshou pushed Nongzhu away, spat out the bloody saliva in his mouth, and turned back to Immortal Crocodile and roared, "Old monster, why are you in a daze? He's not your lover. Quickly kill him. Otherwise, that bastard Yin Jueixing will come back to life again." He exerted all his strength. Swoosh! A huge green broadsword of more than 10 meters appeared in his hand. He flew up, and with a cry of "ah," he slashed at the mysterious black light with all his strength at this moment. Everyone came to their senses because of Yu Qianshou's roar, and they knew that the consequences were extremely serious. Nongzhu's bamboo flute whistled out, when Lanfeng quickly put Lu Yanqing on the ground, and his huge silver sword shot out, setting off waves of gang qi. A flying sword also flashed out of Li Duxing's storage bag. Everyone focused their attacks on the mysterious black light. The mysterious black light seemed to have sensed that someone was going to attack it, and it emitted black light thorns directly facing the attacks from all directions. Bang, bang, bang. A series of loud noises sounded, and the waves of gang qi surged, making people feel that the world was changing. The earth shook, and the towering medicine hut mountain collapsed in the shaking. Each of the 4 attacking silhouettes spat out a mouthful of blood with a puff sound. They were violently thrown far away. Bang, bang, bang. All of them sank deep into the mountains surrounding the Spirit Fong Valley. It gave people the impression that the stronger one's attack was, the greater the rebound force would be. The huge green fire broadsword collapsed at the moment of the counterattack, and so did the bamboo flute and the flying sword. The 4 attacking weapons were all destroyed in the blink of an eye. Bing Qingzi stared at the mysterious black light in the sky in disbelief. Lu Yanqing was still lying on the ground, but her body was covered with a thick layer of dust. The 2 people who didn't attack seemed to be unharmed. The 4 people who were shaken away pulled out of the deep mountain, and only Yu Qianshou crawled out. Fortunately, the 4 people were not weak, and they were all masters of the Huashan realm. Although they were all badly injured, it was not fatal. After the 4 people came out, they all stared at the mysterious black light in the sky with blood dripping from their mouths. Yu Qianshou stretched out his hand to wipe his mouth and nose, but the blood kept flowing out as if it was free. The mysterious black light flickered, and just as it was about to fly away, a figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere to stop it. Immortal Lord Crocodile's arms turned into 2 huge, rough palms, and he directly held the black light in his palms. The black light seemed to be unwilling to be controlled, and it surged violently. Immortal Lord Crocodile gripped it tightly with a serious expression, and they were in a deadlock. Suddenly, Immortal Lord Crocodile let out an angry roar and forcibly dragged the mysterious black light down from the sky. The people below were shocked. They didn't expect that the mysterious black light, which the four of them couldn't handle together, would be dragged down by him alone. Except for Yu Qianqiu, everyone else gasped. They didn't know who this person was, and how could he have such a profound cultivation? However, everyone could tell that the pair of hands that had thrown the escaping Yan Zhuixing back were the same pair of giant hands. Yu Qianqiu's nose was bleeding profusely as he waved his arms excitedly and said, "Good job, old monster. Kill it for me." Perhaps he was too excited, but then he clutched his chest with a pained expression and couldn't shout anymore. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng remembered that a certain guy had mentioned looking for help in the South Sea purple bamboo forest, and they looked at the ashen-faced Yu Qianqiu at the same time. They didn't know where this strange guy had found such an expert. At this moment, the scenery between heaven and earth suddenly became a little dim. Everyone looked up into the sky and found that a hazy gray fog had suddenly appeared in the sky above Spirit Fong Valley. It wasn't actually thick, but it seemed to cover the blazing sun's radiance. What was inconceivable was that a pair of slender and huge eyes suddenly appeared in the hazy gray fog, and those cold and merciless eyes looked down indifferently. Everyone felt that it was an illusion, but they inexplicably felt that the pair of eyes contained an awe-inspiring and unquestionable majesty, at the same time that the strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. The mysterious black light that immortal Lord Crocodile was slowly dragging down seemed to have infinite power in an instant, and the light suddenly soared. Bang! The two huge hands that immortal Lord Crocodile had conjured instantly collapsed. After the black light broke free, it slammed into immortal Lord Crocodile, who had already been sent flying. Bang! Puff! Immortal Lord Crocodile's figure was instantly sent flying into the deep mountains in the distance, and a loud rumble could be faintly heard in the distance. Everyone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. After the mysterious black light hit immortal Lord Crocodile, it instantly turned into a stream of light and quickly disappeared. The group of people was stunned for a long time, and suddenly found that the sky had returned to normal. They couldn't help but look up, and the gray fog in the sky had disappeared. The pair of slender, cold, and merciless eyes had also disappeared, as if nothing had happened just now. Chapter 781. At this moment, Lingfeng Valley had already lost its beautiful appearance. It was full of desolation, and not a single plant could be seen. The ground seemed to have been plowed a few times. It was like a chicken that had shed its feathers. It was so naked that it was somewhat unsightly to look at. The medicine cottage, the landmark mountain in Lingfeng Valley, had also collapsed. None of the people present had expected that the consequences of killing Yan Zhuixing would be like this, especially the mysterious black light. It was simply unbelievable. It seemed to be much higher than Yan Zhuixing's cultivation. How could this be? Everyone was full of doubts, when Lanfeng was the first to wake up among the dumbfounded crowd. His skin had basically turned black from the inside out, and he seemed to be shrouded in a layer of death qi. The first thing he did after waking up was to rush to where Lu Yanqing used to be, dig up the soil, and dig Lu Yanqing out. Absorbing Star's great skill, Yu Qianqiu's shout shocked everyone. They all looked over and saw a dried corpse slowly falling down in front of him. When it hit the ground, it was smashed into pieces. The dead man was none other than Bing Qingzi. Nongzhu flashed over and stood beside Yu Qianqiu. Looking at the wreckage on the ground, she covered her slightly uncomfortable chest and frowned. "Are you a mad dog? Bite whoever you see. He has already given up. Why did you still kill him?" Yu Qianqiu raised his hand to wipe the nosebleed on Dahua's face and said ferociously, "If Yan Zhuixing is completely dead, I don't mind letting him go. The problem is that he ran away again. This old guy is most likely to be of great help to him. He can't be left alive." Nongzhu sighed speechlessly. Four experts at the late stage of Huashan realm died in the Battle of Ling Feng Valley, and all of them died in the hands of this guy. From today on, this guy can be regarded as the torture envoy of the demon region. With his means, there was no need for her to worry anymore. It seemed that Bai Changchun did not choose the wrong person. Nongzhu turned her head and asked suspiciously, What is your cultivation level now? Why do I feel that you have reached the Huashan realm? Yu Qianshou had a messy face and a head full of braids. He looked around and grinned evilly, looking exactly like a member of the beggars' gang. His sinister smile suddenly came to an abrupt halt as he cried out in alarm. He teleported to the original hillside and looked around, not knowing where the Enchantress of 100 Charms and Yin Yu were buried. He immediately used the earth magic art and quickly sensed the location where the two women were buried. The soil there retreated like a tide, revealing the two women lying inside. He quickly checked the condition of the two women, and after discovering that they were fine, he heaved a sigh of relief and sat down on the ground. Nongzhu followed them. When she saw the two girls, she looked slightly unhappy, but she still asked, "How is it?" "He's fine, but he's being controlled by the demonic eye. I don't know how to get rid of it." The worried Yu Qianshou suddenly paused and said to Nongzhu, "Keep an eye on them for me. I'll be back soon." Then he flew into the deep mountains in the distance, in the direction where a mortal crocodile was sent flying. Flying in that direction, he easily found a mortal crocodile. The target was very obvious. On a collapsed mountain, a battered and exhausted immortal crocodile was sitting cross-legged, healing his injuries. Before Yu Qianshou landed, he opened his eyes and looked up, then closed them again. Yu Qianshou knew that he was healing, so he landed beside him and did not disturb him. After a while, he slowly exhaled and opened his eyes. As soon as a mortal crocodile opened his eyes, he looked at Yu Qianshou with a serious expression and said, "The demonic god." Yu Qianshou squatted beside him and was stunned. He asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" Immortal Crocodile shook his head and sighed. That Yin Zhuixing is indeed a person blessed by the demonic god. The demonic god made a move just now, and that aura was the aura of God. Yu Qianshou smiled sheepishly. In fact, he had long guessed that Yin Zhuixing was a person blessed by the demonic god. He just deliberately hid it, mainly because he was afraid of scaring this guy. Now that this old monster was injured, he really felt a little embarrassed. He continued to fool him. "That's impossible. Aren't you still fine? If the demonic god really made a move, I'm afraid you would already be dead. How could you still be sitting here talking to me?" Immortal Crocodile smiled bitterly. "The demonic god doesn't even bother to fight me. We are not on the same level at all. He only indirectly made a move to warn me. If he really made a move directly, I would not be alive. What kind of person is the demonic god? He is a world-shaking genius of a generation. According to immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who had come into contact with the gods, even in the divine realm, the demonic god is a well-known figure. How can we hope to reach him?" Yu Qianshou laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "That's right. He is a god. Why would he bother with small fry like us? He will do his own thing. We will do ours. What's there to be emotional about? There's no need to be afraid of him." Immortal Crocodile's expression twitched. "That's a demonic god. How can we not be afraid? Who cares? Just don't provoke him next time. If we can't afford to provoke him, we can at least hide from him." Yu Qianshou tried his best to squeeze out a smile on his face to comfort him. However, the more he smiled, the more anxious he became. Immortal Crocodile immediately rolled his eyes. "You want it next time? You really think that the demonic god is just a decoration? You will die. Next time, do it yourself. Don't call me. I can't afford to provoke him." "Huh. Who would take the initiative to provoke him? Let's talk about the future in the future. Let's get down to business first." "That?" Yu Qianshou coughed. "Old monster, let me ask you something. Do you have any way of finding out where Yin Zhuixing's primordial spirit escaped to? You still want to do it?" Immortal Crocodile stood up and sneered. "Provoking the demonic god again. He's not to be trifled with. Don't cause trouble until the demonic god breaks through the void and arrives personally. When that happens, you won't even have time to cry. No one in this world can protect you. Damn it, I don't care if he's a demonic god or a bird god. So what if he's a demonic god?" Yu Qianshou was enraged. He stood up and waved his arms, shouting, "Even if I don't go looking for that bastard will come looking for me for revenge sooner or later." Rather than that, I might as well take advantage of his weakness and kill him." Immortal Crocodile snorted. "If you really want to kill him, why didn't you use the divine sword just now? Before the demonic god makes his move, that black light shouldn't be able to withstand the power of the divine sword. I guarantee that Yin Juexing's body and soul will be destroyed. Isn't that the end of it? Divine sword?" Yu Qianshou was stunned. His temper disappeared, and he stood there dumbfounded. After a long time, he suddenly beat his chest and howled. "Damn it! Why didn't you say earlier that the divine sword could break it? I forgot." Immortal Crocodile sneered. "If I had known that he was protected by the demonic god, I would have definitely told you that the divine sword could break it. But I wouldn't have come. I'm really impressed with myself now. I actually fought with the demonic god." Yu Qianshou immediately became listless. It was all because of his own thoughts. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have hidden it from him. After a long silence, he asked weakly, "Is there any way to find Yin Juexing's escaped primordial spirit?" Immortal Crocodile shook his head. "You overestimate me. Even the powerful demonic god isn't omnipotent. The human world is so big. It won't be easy to find him unless he shows himself. Maybe, since the demonic god wants to protect him, he might use a great technique to break through the void and take his primordial spirit away. Even if he didn't leave, his body has been destroyed. He shouldn't be able to cause any trouble in the short term." "Sigh. I hope so." Yu Qianshou sighed and waved his hand. "Forget it. Since we can't find him, forget it. The most important thing now is to find a way to get rid of the people controlled by the demonic eye. The celestial realm and the demon realm had a great war before. There should be a way to get rid of it, right? Otherwise, with the power of the demonic eye, the demon realm wouldn't have been sealed, right? The demonic eye is the demonic eye. It's one of the demonic eye's moves that can control people. It's called demonic eye ecstasy. The two cannot be confused. Demonic eye ecstasy is just an evil art in the celestial realm's terms. It's not the most powerful art of the demonic eye. Demonic eye ecstasy is powerful because if the controlled person doesn't expose himself, it will be difficult for others to find out. In fact, once discovered, it's not difficult to get rid of it, Immortal Crocodile said slowly. Yu Qianshou's eyes lit up. "Not difficult to get rid of? That means you have a way to get rid of it? You said it yourself. The immortals and demons have fought before. Naturally, there's a way to get rid of it. Otherwise, if the people of the celestial realm are controlled, what's the point of fighting? We can just admit defeat." Immortal Crocodile said in a low voice, "There are many ways to get rid of it. The demonic eye mainly controls people's primordial spirits. Many people in the celestial realm have extraordinary attainments in primordial spirit cultivation and can easily get rid of the control. In fact, the controlled person can also get rid of the control themselves. As long as their cultivation surpasses the caster, their primordial spirit will also be stronger, and they can usually get rid of it. There's also the simplest and most effective way. Kill the caster completely, and the spell will naturally get rid of it." Yu Qianshou rubbed his chin and said suspiciously, "The last two methods can definitely be rejected. You're a dignified immortal lord, so you must have extraordinary attainments in primordial spirit cultivation, right? Then, don't tell me to get rid of the control and bring them to the celestial realm. I can't do that at the moment. You know the reason better than I do. Although my primordial spirit is strong, I've never dabbled in this aspect. I can kill people, but I can't save them." Immortal Crocodile said teasingly, "There's a good way. You can find the caster and ask him to get rid of it himself." Yu Qianshou's face immediately darkened. He said in a low voice, "After talking for so long, it's all nonsense." Immortal Crocodile waved his hand and interrupted him. "I already said that there are many ways to get rid of it. What's the rush? Let me finish. In this world, there is a kind of person who cultivates magic arts that are mighty and righteous. They are born to be the nemesis of evil and crooked cultivators. All ghosts and monsters are just small tricks that can't see the light in front of them. A mere demon eye ecstasy can easily break them." Yu Qianshou pulled a long face and said, "Don't tell me you want me to go to the celestial realm to look for it again. I admit that I don't have that ability. Are you happy now? Immortal Crocodile said in surprise. Why do you need to go to the celestial realm to look for it? Is your master's morality technique not strong enough? With your master's methods, it's easy to get rid of this little spell. Chapter 782, Morality Technique. Yu Qinshou's expression froze as he thought of Bai Changchun's evil means. After a moment of hesitation, he slowly shook his head and said, "Old monster, you'd better help me think of another way." He had promised Bai Changchun that he would not look for him again. If he broke his promise, he might not be able to find Bai Changchun again. It was better not to do this unless he had no other choice. Immortal Lord Crocodile was slightly disappointed. In fact, he really wanted to interact more with people like Bai Changchun. Such people had extraordinary insights in cultivation. If he interacted more with experts with such high comprehension, he would often be enlightened with just a word from them and solve the problems that had plagued him for many years. He thought that Yu Qinshu could not find Bai Changchun, so he took out a small bottle from the storage bracelet and handed it to him. "Take it." Yu Qinshu took it and was stunned. He asked, "What's this?" Immortal Crocodile said disapprovingly, "Spirit Awakening Pill. It can expel evil spirits and remove the control of the vital spirit by demonic arts." "Damn, why didn't you take out such a good thing earlier? What are you talking about?" Yu Qinshu turned around and flew directly to Ling Fong Valley. When he returned to Ling Fong Valley, he saw Lu Yanqing standing beside Li Duxing and Wen Lanfeng. Nongzhu also brought the two unconscious women to them. Lu Yanqing had short hair and tearful eyes, but it did not diminish her peerless elegance. Instead, it showed another kind of unique charm. She was really a natural beauty. She was staring at the collapsed medicine hut with tearful eyes. Yu Qinshu landed beside them and looked at Lu Yanqing from head to toe. Although he was a little annoyed, he was still amazed. Yu Qinshu coldly snorted and said, "Seniors, you must keep an eye on this crazy woman. Her good intentions are not repaid, and she keeps biting people. I now suspect that she has already been controlled by Yan Zhuixing's demonic eye. Seniors, you should be careful." Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and suddenly bowed deeply to Yu Qinshu. "It's all in the past. You don't have to mention it anymore. She was just anxious and confused, but now she is sobered up." What? Yu Qinshu pointed at Lu Yanqing and turned his face. F*CK? I risked everything to save her, but she turned around and tried to kill me, and now I can't even talk? Aren't you guys being too overbearing? Wen Lanfeng was rendered speechless by his words. Li Duxing, on the other hand, appeared to be very calm. He closed his eyes and paid no attention. Lu Yanqing slowly stepped forward and bowed to Yu Qinshu. "It's all my fault." Before she finished speaking, a large string of tears immediately fell. Yu Qinshu's anger was almost extinguished, and he couldn't vent his anger. He cursed in his heart. Beautiful women always take advantage of others. Looking at the lifeless Wen Lanfeng, he coughed and changed the topic. "Great magic, Dr. Lu. Don't cry anymore. It's all in the past. Do something useful. Senior Wen is almost dead because of you. Hurry up and find a way to save her. Don't always let the person who cares for you get hurt." Then he stopped talking to her, walked to the two unconscious women, and showed them the small bottle in his palm. As soon as he opened the bottle, everyone immediately smelled a fragrance. As the fragrance entered their lungs, they were refreshed. They knew the thing in the bottle was not simple. Yu Qinshu poured out a white elixir the size of a soybean into his palm. Nongzhu beside him asked curiously, "What is this?" "Awakening elixir. It said that it can remove the control of the magic eye. I don't know if it works." Yu Qinshu looked around with the small pill in his hand. He was also confused. Why is it so small? Wen Lanfeng's attention was on Lu Yanqing. Hearing this, he suddenly turned around and stared at the thing in Yu Qinshu's hand. He was worried about Wen Rui. If he died, Wen Rui would be the only pillar of the Wen family. Lu Yanqing and Li Duxing also looked at him. They saw Yu Qianshou pour out 2 elixirs in his hand. Then he opened the lips of Enchantress and Yin Yu and put 1 elixir into their mouths. Then he forced the elixir into their abdomen to help them refine. When the elixir was gone, a faint red mist rose from the heads of the 2 women, with a slight smell of blood, and slowly dissipated in the air. Looking at the 2 women who were still in a coma, Yu Qianshou was a little hesitant. He didn't know if it would work, so he tried to wake Enchantress up first. Enchantress woke up slowly. The first thing she saw was Yu Qianshou, who was staring at her with wide eyes. Her eyes fell on Yu Qianshou's head. She was stunned and said, "Why do you have so many braids on your head?" The people around looked at each other. Yu Qianshou was stunned. Then he patted his chest and said with a smile, Well, it means you were good to say that." But at this moment, Enchantress suddenly exclaimed, Yin Juexing is here." She suddenly stood up. Yu Qianshou turned around and said with a smile, "Don't worry, he has already left." As he spoke, he patted Yin Yu to wake her up. The latter's reaction was almost exactly the same as Enchantress's. Yu Qianshou immediately told the 2 of them what had happened. Only then did the 2 women let out a sigh of relief with lingering fear. Yu Qianshou stretched his waist in a comfortable mood and sighed. This trip was not in vain. I finally solved the problem. But before he put down his hand, a soft and fragrant body rushed into his arms and hugged him. She directly used her fragrant lips to block his mouth. Yu Qianshou's eyes widened. When he realized it was Yin Yu, he quickly pushed her away. He frowned and said seriously, "Owner Yin, we are not that familiar with each other, right? Dead man, you still dare to lie to me." Yin Yu was shy. She punched Yu Qianshou's chest and then stuck her lips to Yu Qianshou's without any scruples. Knowing that her sweetheart came from afar to save her, her heart was as sweet as drinking honey. Now she was ready to risk everything. She just wanted to kiss him at all costs, no matter where they were. Damn it. Since I've been exposed, I'm ready to risk everything. Yu Qianshou hugged her tightly. They kissed passionately in front of everyone, which stunned the group of people. This action was a little out of touch with this era. Enchantress's smiling face hid a little loneliness. Li Duxing, Wen Lanfeng, and Lu Yanqing turned their heads to one side. Only Nongzhu's face was a little dark. No one could be happy to see their son-in-law kissing another woman in front of them. Enough! Don't you know where you are? Nongzhu finally couldn't help shouting angrily. They finally separated, breathing heavily. After looking at each other and smiling, all the grudges disappeared. They couldn't help kissing passionately again. After several times, they stopped. Yin Yu stared at him with a blushing face. She bit her attractive red lips and said, "Your braid is so ugly. Don't leave me alone again. I'll comb your braid." Yu Qianshou raised her pink chin with a sinister smile and said, "I like it." Yin Yu immediately punched him again. People beside them couldn't help shivering and felt goosebumps all over. Wen Lanfeng coughed and came over to disturb them with embarrassment. He said that, "Yu Qianshou, can you give me a refreshing pill? Wen Rui hasn't removed the control of the magic eye yet." "No problem." Yu Qianshou was in a good mood. He took out a small bottle and poured out a pill for him. Wen Lanfeng carefully put it away as if he had received a treasure. Nongzhu came over with a sullen face. She stared at Wen Lanfeng and said seriously, "How is your injury?" "I think it's a big trouble. Let Lu Yin see in the morning. If you need help, take advantage of the fact that everyone is here." She glanced at Yu Qianshou and thought that this guy had a lot of treasures. He could even remove the control of the magic eye. Maybe he also had a panacea to save Wen Lanfeng. Yu Qianshou, who was holding hands with Yin Yu and flirting, didn't know that Nongzhu had paid attention to him. Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and said, "The blood devil palm is really not simple. The blood in my body is about to solidify. Plus I was injured just now. I'm afraid there's no way to save it. I can't hold on for a few days. Don't bother anymore." Hearing that Wen Lanfeng was going to die, Yu Qianshou was embarrassed to flirt with Yin Yu anymore. He looked at Wen Lanfeng with great sympathy and concern. Lu Yanqing, who was silent in sorrow, suddenly raised her head. It seemed that she just remembered that when Lanfeng had been hit by Yin Juexing's blood devil palm. She hurriedly grabbed Wen Lanfeng's hand and anxiously said, "There must be a way. There must be a way. I must have a way to cure you. I must be able to cure you." There was a tremble in her voice. It was the fear of losing the most precious thing. When Lanfeng looked at her quietly, this was the first time that she took the initiative to hold her hand. Although it was to check her injury, it could be seen that she still cared about her very much. Unknowingly, when Lanfeng's eyes became a little moist, he slowly turned his head to the side, and inadvertently, 2 streaks of tears slid down his skinny cheeks. How many years of unwavering love! How many people laughed at him behind his back, but his sincerity had never wavered. For her, he could give up everything, because in this world, there would never be anyone who would treat her better than himself. Today's scene was what he had dreamed of, and he had always hoped that one day she would take the initiative to hold his hand, but wasn't this day a little too late? If only he had a little more time to reminisce about this moment, it would have been good. Why did it have to happen when she was about to reach the end of her life? Fate was so cruel. People who had reached Wen Lanfeng's level of cultivation would naturally have some understanding of their own injuries. She estimated that she was almost there. Only Lu Yanqing, who was treating Wen Lanfeng, was anxiously murmuring, "I must be able to cure you. I must be able to cure you." Everyone else was silent. It seemed that they had even forgotten to breathe. They all noticed the tears on Wen Lanfeng's thin and dark face. This scene shocked everyone. Wen Lanfeng, a top expert in the cultivation world, was actually crying. Chapter 783. Wen Lanfeng raised his face as high as possible. He didn't want the tears on his face to fall, nor did he want Lu Yanqing to see it. Yes, Lu Yanqing really didn't see it now. She was burning with anxiety, and the only thing she was thinking about was how to cure Wen Lanfeng. She took out a set of instruments from the storage bag and pricked Wen Lanfeng's finger with a silver needle. For Yu Qianqiu, it was like a test. However, Lu Yanqing didn't see it, but it didn't mean that others didn't see it. His head was raised higher and higher as he faced the sunlight, causing the tear stains and teardrops on his face to become more and more conspicuous. They sparkled and sparkled on his skinny and dark face, as clear as his heart towards Lu Yanqing, without any impurities in his eyes. Anyone who saw Wen Lanfeng at this time would be moved. The 2 women, Enchantress and Yinyu, couldn't stand it anymore. They turned around quietly and sobbed secretly. Their silent tears were much stronger than Wen Lanfeng's. They kept wiping their tears, but they couldn't dry them. The men were speechless. It seemed that they understood many things they didn't understand before at this moment. The bitterness in these 2 lines of tears was not something that outsiders could understand. Which of the men present didn't ridicule Wen Lanfeng in their hearts before? But these 2 lines of tears made them understand that Wen Lanfeng was not stupid. He knew what sarcasm was, and he knew that he was an idiot in the eyes of outsiders. However, his love was more persistent than anyone else. His love was purer than anyone else, and his love was more thorough than anyone else. He was determined to protect his true love. He would rather give up everything, even his own life, than let his beloved suffer a little grievance. Was this behavior stupid or not? Was it rational? Anyway, these men admitted that none of them could do it. But because of today, they remembered what was called sincerity, an incomparable sincerity. Damn it. Why are you crying? You make me feel uncomfortable. Yu Qianqiu scratched his scalp with a strange expression. Li Duxing took a deep breath and slightly closed his eyes. His face looked more indifferent. Nong Zhu looked at Lu Yanqing, who was getting more and more busy, and suddenly frowned. She seemed to have gradually lost her sense of propriety. She immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Lu Yanqing, what the hell are you doing? Can you cure the blood devil palm or not? If you can't, we'll think of something else. Wen Lanfeng doesn't have that much time for you to waste." Lu Yanqing shivered, and the thing in her hand fell to the ground. She squatted down and picked something up and said in a trembling voice, Can Can cure? Nongzhu asked curiously. If you can cure it, why are you still busy? Hurry up and treat it. If there's anything you need, just tell us. We'll think of a way to solve it. Wenlan Feng took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to him and quickly wiped away the tears on his face. He looked at Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, I guess there must be something difficult. Since that's the case, then forget it. There's no need to force yourself. Bullshit. What do you mean by don't force yourself? Nongzhu stared at Lu Yanqing and shouted, Lu Yanqing, stand up and talk to me. What's going on? Lu Yanqing slowly stood up, pinching the thing in her hand. It seemed that she was very hard, and her knuckles had turned white. Under the repeated urging of Nongzhu, she finally said with a pale face, Make a few elixirs, and I'll cast a spell, and then I can... She had been there all the time, but there had been no result, which made them very anxious. Nongzhu touched her forehead and did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said, Can what? Tell me quickly. Is Wenlan Feng's life so unbearable in your eyes? The last sentence was a little heavy. Lu Yanqing immediately shook her head, and then bit her lip and said, Force out the blood in the body together with the suppressed blood devil palm, provided that we find 2 people with similar blood types to draw their blood for Wenlan Feng. First, wash the whole body with blood, and then change the whole body blood again. Nongzhu was stunned and doubted. Is this method feasible? First wash, and then change all the blood in Wenlan Feng's body. How much blood will it take? Then won't the blood of those 2 people be drained? Wouldn't it be exchanging 2 lives for one? Now he vaguely knew why Lu Yanqing did not answer. This woman never killed people. What was the difference between this way of saving people and letting her kill people? There's really no need. Wenlan Feng stared at Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, Yanqing, your master is famous. In this life, you uphold the medical ethics passed down by your master and only save people. Although you have cultivated until now, you have never killed a person, and I have never even heard of you fighting with anyone. You are like an orchid in an empty valley in this deep mountain. How can I let you kill? How can I let you feel uneasy for the rest of your life? Humph. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, Not necessarily. Didn't you see that she was alive and kicking and wanted to kill me? Nongzhu said with a sullen face, Why are you meddling? Fine. Yu Qianqiu said, I won't meddle in this matter even if you ask me to. Wenlan Feng smiled bitterly and stretched out his thin hands towards Lu Yanqing's shoulders. Just when he was about to touch them, he stopped in the air. He was used to holding Lu Yanqing when she was in a coma. Now that she was awake, he was afraid that she would be unhappy. After a moment of hesitation, seeing that Lu Yanqing did not object, he slowly put it on her shoulder. The man and the woman looked at each other and suddenly showed a knowing smile. Lu Yanqing suddenly said with certainty, I can do it. I must do it. I will cure you. Wenlan Feng put his hands on her fragrant shoulders and shook his head with a smile. Your hands are the cleanest and most benevolent hands in the entire cultivation world. They are as pure as your heart. I won't let them be tainted by killing because of me. Lu Yanqing took his arm and said anxiously, As long as I can save you, I am willing to do anything. But I refuse. Wenlan Feng smiled and said, I don't want you to feel guilty because of me. That's bullshit. Nongzhu gritted her teeth and said, Fine, you are all the kindest people in the cultivation world. We are all evil people. Then she turned around and said, Yu Qianqiu, they all want to sacrifice themselves to be good people. Can you think of a way to help them? Yu Qianqiu was also gritting his teeth. When he heard this, he was stunned and said, How can I help them? Nongzhu immediately pointed to Wenlan Feng and said, Think of a way to save him. Won't they save killing people? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, I don't know anything about the blood devil palm. How can I save him? Nongzhu winked and gestured. Do you have any elixirs? Like the spirit's sobering pill just now. You're crazy. Do you think I run a pharmacy? Where did you get so many elixirs? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and snappily said, No, you just told me not to get involved. You really don't want to save him. Nongzhu said harshly. Yu Qianqiu immediately raised his eyebrows and sneered. What? Do you want a one-on-one fight? He was not afraid of Nongzhu now. He would fight with her anytime. You too, don't worry about me. When Lanfeng stopped them and looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, Yu Qianqiu, I really want to ask you for a favor. I hope you can help me. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. If it was Nongzhu, he would not mind arguing with her. But when Lanfeng, a dying man, was begging him, it was really hard for him to refuse. He smiled awkwardly and said, Forget it. You don't have to beg me. I'll try my best. No, you misunderstand. I don't want you to save my life. It's something else. As long as you can promise me this, I'd rather die than regret it. When Lanfeng smiled calmly and said, You're the only one in the world who can do this. Others may not be as good as you. Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu looked at each other. The others were also confused. Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, What's the matter? I can't guarantee that I can do it. Tell me about it first. His old habit was to leave a way out for himself first. When Lanfeng said with a free and easy face, Lu Yanqing accidentally said that your music is unparalleled in the world. There are only a few people in the world who can get a song from you. Once it comes from you, it's a peerless masterpiece, enough to be sung for thousands of years. She is very envious of you. I hope you can also write a song for her. It's my last gift for her. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yu Qianqiu. Temptress was one of the people who knew Yu Qianqiu's attainments in this aspect. She could not help but show a very expectant look. Yin Yu's eyes were full of little stars. She had begun to plan in her heart to ask Yu Qianqiu to write a song for her. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu's face turned green and twitched. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, Senior Wen, don't make things difficult for me. I'd better think of a way to heal your injuries. This is more important to me than curing my injury. It's my last wish. When Lanfeng sighed, Nongzhu immediately became furious and shouted, Wish my ass. When Lanfeng, you're out of your mind. What the hell are you talking about? All the people were speechless. Lu Yanqing anxiously pulled Wen Lanfeng and said, I just said it casually. Don't take it seriously. The most important thing is to cure your injury first. Yes. Damn. No wonder I felt it was familiar. Yu Qianqiu suddenly clapped his hands excitedly and shouted, attracting everyone's attention. He laughed and said, Senior Lu, the method of blood exchange you mentioned actually doesn't require people to die. Think about it. Why do you have to find 2 people? Can't you find 200 people? Everyone will be fine, and we can save people. What do you think of this method? He suddenly thought of this method because he suddenly thought of the blood donation in his previous life. Wasn't it just gathering a little to make a lot? For people in this era, although the method was simple, the idea was very advanced. Generally, they would not think of this. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Lu Yanqing again, looking forward to her reply. Lu Yanqing's eyes lit up and she said in surprise, Of course it's possible. Why didn't I think of it? Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they heard that. They had finally found a way to make these 2 brainless men and women compromise. Nongzhu looked at Yu Qianqiu approvingly. He could see that as long as this guy was forced, he could always squeeze out a good solution to the problem. Chapter 784. Good. That's settled. Nongzhu waved her hand and said, With Lu Yanqing's medical skills, there should be no problem. As for finding hundreds of people to draw their blood, it's a piece of cake. In Baiwan Kingdom, as long as Wen Lanfeng asks, not to mention 200 people, even 20,000 people can be easily gathered. Lu Yanqing, why don't you go to Baiwan Kingdom with Wen Lanfeng? It's also convenient. Lu Yanqing nodded slightly. Her eyes swept over the once lush and beautiful Lingfeng Valley, which had become a barren land, and a trace of sadness and gloom flashed through her eyes. Seeing that the matter had been resolved, Yu Qianqiu looked at the enchantress and Yin Yu, and then looked at a mortal crocodile standing alone on the mountain not far away. He said with relief, All right, everyone disband and go about their own business. We're leaving too. He was about to greet a mortal crocodile and return to the demon domain with the enchantress and Yin Yu. Unexpectedly, when Lanfeng said, Wait, Yu Qianqiu, you still haven't replied to what I just asked of you? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He was speechless to meet such an unreasonable person. He was about to lose his life, but he still asked for a song. He was not only a love-struck fool, but also an idiot. Nongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Wen Lanfeng, heal your injury first. It's not like we won't meet again in the future. Why are you in such a hurry now?" Wen Lanfeng immediately transmitted his voice to Nongzhu. "It's not that I'm unreasonable, but it's really rare to encounter such an opportunity. This guy has always been elusive. Who knows when we will find him again after we break up this time? What's more, I know that Lu Yanqing really likes his songs. If I don't take advantage of my injury now, it will be really inconvenient for me to ask for his help in the future. You should know that his current identity and cultivation are not what they used to be. You beat the drum. Just treat it as helping Lu Yanqing realize this wish. Besides, you're also a musician. Don't you want to see for yourself whether this guy is really as talented as the legend says?" He secretly transmitted his voice to Nongzhu, pretending to be in deep thought. Then he said slowly, "Nongzhu, I know my own injury. Although Lu Yanqing's medical skills are extraordinary, anything can happen. What if I have an accident this time?" Nongzhu stared at Wen Lanfeng, dumbfounded, and then looked at Yu Qianqiu with a strange expression. Wen Lanfeng was right. He also wanted to see if this guy was really as talented as the rumors said in the cultivation world. But no matter how he looked at it, this guy looked like a hooligan. How could he be talented? Lu Yanqing did not know what Wen Lanfeng was thinking and comforted him. "Don't worry. I'm sure I can cure you." Yu Qianqiu, who was a little speechless, immediately nodded and cooperated. "Yes, yes. Senior Lu will definitely be able to cure you. Don't think too much about it." Wen Lanfeng said with a wry smile, "Yu Qianqiu, is it so difficult for you to compose a song? The weather is unpredictable. If something really happens, today will be the last time we meet. Do you really have the heart to let me leave with regrets?" Damn it. Someone even cursed himself to have an accident. Yu Qianqiu found it hard to refuse him and couldn't help but hesitate. Nongzhu immediately coughed and said, "Yu Qianqiu, all the right and wrong are in the past, but you can't forget one thing. She did help you before. You could decide what to do. I won't say more." Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt something was wrong. He was watching Nongzhu's expression suspiciously. Suddenly, someone behind him poked him. Looking back, he found it was Yanyu. He could not help asking her what she wanted. Yanyu said seriously, "Isn't Senior Wen asking for it for Senior Lu? If it's convenient for you, compose a song for Senior Lu." As he spoke, he turned to look at the allure beauty and continued, "Let's not talk about this matter anymore. Senior Lu has always taken good care of us." The allure beauty immediately met Yu Qianqiu's gaze and nodded heavily. The reason why Yanyu tried so hard was that she wanted to see if her man was really talented. She was looking forward to it very much. The temptress was also looking forward to what new song Yu Qianqiu could compose. Damn it! Since when did I owe so many favors? Yu Qianqiu glanced at them and finally looked at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing a few more times, wondering which song he should choose that was more suitable for the two of them. What song should he choose? In contemplation, he paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. Sometimes he looked up to the sky, and sometimes he bent down. The people around him suddenly became a little excited. Judging from Yu Qianqiu's behavior, he had undoubtedly agreed. Obviously, he was preparing a good song. The temptress and Yanyu secretly looked at each other, and a smile quietly appeared on their faces. However, Nongzhu was still deeply doubtful. Was this guy for real? Could he compose a classic song in such a short time with his rascally look? How could a so-called classic be called a classic if it was not thoroughly tempered? At this moment, Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly stopped on a hillside in the distance, which was covered with weeds. It was so far away that he stared at it carefully. Amidst the lush green short grass, there was a beautiful beauty blooming alone. The bright red color contained a little black ink. It was very beautiful. It was the poppy flower that he was very familiar with in his previous life. It was swaying shyly in the wind. He could not help sighing inwardly. I used to plant on a large scale in my previous life. Damn it, I was distracted. When he came back to his senses, he accidentally glanced at Lu Yanqing. He was stunned for a moment, and then he looked back at the flower and thought to himself, "Got it." Now that he knew what to do, he began to act tough again. In his words, since he had already given his all, he had to perform well when it was time to do so. Otherwise, he would have suffered a loss. He gazed at the beauty with a faint smile on his face. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking abnormally tall and straight. He exuded a scholarly aura, and he really did have the demeanor of a scholar. Everyone present looked at each other in dismay. They all felt as if he had suddenly become a different person, and the feeling he gave off was like the difference between heaven and earth. Nongju squinted her eyes and laughed in her heart. Is this guy for real? Everyone's gazes followed Yu Qianzhou's gaze to the distant hillside. Because the surrounding area had been plowed by the battle, the green on the hillside was exceptionally eye-catching, especially the Yu beauty that was swaying shyly in the wind. Right at this moment, Yu Qianzhou flew over in a graceful manner and slowly descended on the hill. He stared silently at the flower for a while before he sat down cross-legged and casually took out a zither and placed it on his knees. Is it really starting? The enchantress and Yinyu immediately flew over, and Nongju also flew over with a smile. When Lanfeng called Lu Yanqing to fly together, Li Duxing could not help but run over to join the fun. He had heard Yu Qianzhou's playing and singing in the ghost village, and it was really not enough. Immortal Lord Crocodile had a strange expression on his face as he moved closer to the group. However, he was still a distance away from them. Under everyone's gaze, Yu Qianzhou smiled elegantly at the fresh flower in front of him. It was a very graceful thing to do, but with his braids, it made people feel awkward no matter how they looked at it. Nongju said, "Boy, can you do it? If you can't, don't pretend here." Yu Qianzhou continued to maintain his poise, feeling disinclined to pay him any attention. Once he provoked him, the two of them would start bickering, and that would definitely ruin the atmosphere that had been built up with great difficulty. He looked up at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, "Since Senior One has spoken, I, Yu Qianzhou, will present a song called Woman Flower to you two seniors. Enjoy it carefully." Woman Flower? The few of them smacked their lips and looked at Lu Yanqing together. It was obvious that the name of the song was specially made for Lu Yanqing. There was a faint trace of envy in the eyes of Enchantress and Yinyu. Wen Lanfeng seemed to like the song very much. He happily looked at Lu Yanqing, who was silent, and then looked at Yu Qianzhou, his eyes full of expectation. Yu Qianzhou stretched out his hand and gently caressed the Yu beauty in front of him. When he retracted his hand, he had already played a gentle and beautiful tune on the strings of the zither. The melody was so unique that it instantly dispelled the doubts in everyone's hearts. It was as if in the blink of an eye, they were placed in a quiet and serene valley. Everyone's eyes involuntarily focused on the Yu beauty. Yu Qianzhou's fingers were nimble and light as he plucked the strings of his zither. When a melody entered a soft and quiet state, he had already begun to echo the heartstrings of the zither. He sang, "I have a flower planted in my heart, budding and waiting to bloom. Day and night, I eagerly await the one who has the heart to enter my dream." The beginning of the song was heart-stirring. In the blink of an eye, everyone was surprised, but in the blink of an eye, they were comforted by the beautiful music. Nongju stared at Yu Qianzhou in astonishment, her face full of disbelief. Lu Yanqing was the most moved. Her body trembled slightly, and the beginning of the song had already made her mood a little uncontrollable. Wasn't she singing her own heart? Yu Qianzhou stared at the Yu beauty affectionately and said, "Woman's flower, swaying in the world of mortals. Woman's flower, swaying gently in the wind. I only hope that there's a pair of gentle hands that can soothe the loneliness in my heart. I have a flower. The fragrance of the flowers fills the branches. Who will sincerely seek traces of the fragrance? Flowers don't bloom for long. What can be broken must be broken. Women are like flowers in a dream." Even if there was no flower in front of everyone at this time, there was already a flower in their minds, swaying gently in the wind, so lovely and touching. The sentence, "who will sincerely seek traces of the fragrance," immediately made Lu Yanqing bite her lips, almost unable to help herself. When Lanfeng's mind kept echoing the sentence, "Flowers don't bloom for long. What can be broken must be broken," tasting a trace of impulse. No need to hesitate to cherish the taste. Yu Qianqiu smiled and shook his head slowly and continued to sing, "I have a flower growing in my heart. True love no one understands. Weeds have covered the hillside. The most heartache is to admire oneself. Woman's flower swaying in the world of mortals. Woman's flower swaying gently in the wind. I only hope that there is a pair of gentle hands that can soothe the loneliness in my heart. Woman's flower swaying in the world of mortals. Woman's flower swaying gently in the wind. If you smell the strong fragrance of the flower, don't ask me for whom the flower is red." This section of faint singing immediately caused everyone's eyes to once again focus on Lu Yanqing. Everyone seemed to understand her in an instant. It turned out that this woman's heart was so weak and helpless, so beautiful that it made people feel heartache. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianqiu speechlessly. She couldn't imagine how this guy could understand women so well, especially Lu Yanqing so well. The sentence, "If you smell the strong fragrance of the flower, don't ask me for whom the flower is red," made Nongzhu's thoughts fly, and she returned to those indulgent times. Yu Qianqiu's voice suddenly became high-pitched. After loving, one knows how heavy it is. After getting drunk, one knows how strong the wine is. Flowers bloom and wilt in the end. Fate does not stay. Like the spring breeze comes and goes, women are like flowers in a dream. Fate does not stay. Like the spring breeze comes and goes, women are like flowers in a dream. Women are like flowers in a dream. Chapter 785. The mountain breeze blew gently, and the sound of the zither stopped faintly. Everyone stood there in a daze, and they were captivated by the final note. They were dazed, and they were unable to recover from it for a long time. Yu Qianqiu looked around and was very satisfied with the effect. His act of being a gentleman was not in vain. He put away the zither and bent down to pluck the shy beauty Yu. He sniffed it and walked to Wen Lanfeng with a smile, waving it in front of him. Wen Lanfeng came back to his senses and looked at Yu Qianqiu with eyes full of amazement. He bowed deeply and thanked him. "I have long heard that Yu Qianqiu is talented, but I never believed it. Today I have seen it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. You are indeed worthy of your reputation. You flatter me. It's fine as long as it can satisfy Senior Wen." Yu Qianqiu stuffed the beauty Yu into his hand and patted it. He smiled and said, "If you have smelled the fragrance of the flower, don't ask for whom the flower is red. You must know that women are like flowers. Flowers are like dreams. There is no need to hesitate. I wish Senior Wen's lover a happy ending." Wen Lanfeng nodded excitedly and said, "Thank you." He then strode to Lu Yanqing and presented the flower in his trembling hands. He did not dare to look into Lu Yanqing's eyes. Only when his hands were empty did he dare to raise his head to look at her. Lu Yanqing held the beauty Yu in her fingers and sniffed it with a depressed expression. Who knew that she would gently walk to Yu Qianqiu and stare at Yu Qianqiu with her clear eyes and ask, "Who do you think can understand the loneliness in my heart? Why did you go to ask him?" Everyone's eyes flickered with suspicion. Yu Qianqiu's face stiffened. He immediately shook his head and said, "I really don't understand." He then pointed to Wen Lanfeng and said, "Senior Wen is a man with a heart. He will definitely understand." Lu Yanqing's eyes flashed with a trace of undetectable desolation and said with a faint smile, "I have always been very curious. What kind of world is Yu Qianqiu's world? Can you tell me?" The enchantress and Yin Yu looked at each other. Nongzhu's mouth was slightly open, and when Lanfeng's chest was rising and falling rapidly. Li Duxing closed his eyes slightly. Immortal Crocodile, who was not far away, looked at him with burning eyes. Yu Qianqiu paused and secretly glanced at Wen Lanfeng. Then he laughed and said, "My world is wonderful and exciting. It's hard for ordinary people to adapt to it. Just like the flower in Senior Lu's hand, it was only suitable to grow in this secluded valley, waiting for a sincere person to pluck it. On the other hand, the mortal world outside would only tarnish it and make it lose its original fragrance. Then, it would no longer be it. Two different worlds could only exist side by side, but they could never intersect. Therefore, there is no need for Senior Lu to explore my world. Lu Yanqing looked at the flower in her hand and said with a faint smile, "But it was you who plucked it just now." Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. Suddenly, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Senior Lu, I'm a crude man. I'm more interested in the topic of having sex with women. Flowery topics really don't suit me. You should find someone who understands." Then he said to the enchantress, Yin Yu, immortal crocodile, and Nongzhu, "The matter here is over, and we should go." Then he cupped his hands and said to the others, "Goodbye." After that, he took the lead and flew away. The people he called immediately followed him, and even Nongzhu did not say a word. The sky was high, and the clouds were thin, and the earth was boundless with mountains. There was still a slight breeze blowing through the mountains. On the hillside, there were 3 people standing quietly amidst the lush green weeds. Lu Yanqing, who now had short hair, stared blankly at the horizon where Yu Qianqiu and the others had disappeared. She softly and tactfully murmured, "Fate does not stop, like the spring breeze that comes and goes. Women are like flowers in a dream. Women are like flowers in a dream." In the sky, the group of people flew quickly in the direction of the South Sea purple bamboo forest. Immortal Crocodile, who had the highest cultivation, was following behind, and Yu Qianqiu was flying slowly in front, listlessly. Nongzhu flashed to his side, coughed, and said, "Well, Yu Qianqiu suddenly turned around and interrupted, "I know what you want to say, but I don't want to talk to you now, and don't ask me anything." Nongzhu ignored him and sneered, "I know what you think I want to say to you, but it is not what you think. I just want to praise your good singing. You have deceived many women with your singing, haven't you? F***CK. I lied to you." Yu Qianqiu was so angry that he turned around and flew backward. He pointed at them and said angrily, "I said I wasn't going to sing, but you guys just had to instigate me to sing. Now look at you. Singing caused trouble, didn't you?" Nongzhu sneered, "The most beautiful woman in the world. You must be proud of yourself, aren't you? I don't have anything in common with you, so don't talk to me." Yu Qianqiu warned and turned back to fly. The Allure Beauty and Yin Yu looked at each other in dismay. The former gave the latter a meaningful glance, and Yin Yu tacitly understood and flew to Yu Qianqiu's side. She said in astonishment, "The song just now was very nice. What happened when he sang? Why didn't I recognize it?" Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and tilted his head with a suspicious look. Yin Yu ignored him, hugged his arm, and said coquettishly, "When are you going to give me a song? Is that okay?" Yu Qianqiu's spirit was immediately roused when he touched Yin Yu's ample bosom with his elbow. His gloomy face instantly brightened up, and all his worries were thrown out of the window. He winked at her bosom and said, "Do you really want it?" Yin Yu nodded solemnly. Yu Qianqiu immediately smiled like a fox that had stolen a chicken and promised, Okay, sure. Find a place where there is no one, and I will sing 18 touches for you." "Really?" Yin Yu said with surprise. Yu Qianqiu moved his elbow and said with a smile, "Of course." Yin Yu saw that he was unhappy, so she came to cheer him up. She didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would really promise to give her a song, so she was really overjoyed. She didn't expect that his words were full of dirty meaning, and she hugged him more tightly in joy. Yu Qianqiu's face was full of smile. Happiness is always more important than trouble. The night in the South Sea purple bamboo forest was especially charming. Tonight, the purple bamboo forest was filled with the laughter of women. As the saying goes, 3 women make a play, and it is lively when they are together. Purple Dress was very happy to have a companion, and she fully displayed the spirit of a host and welcomed them warmly. The three women chattered almost endlessly, and all the men stood aside. There should have been four women, but unfortunately, Furong had taken the limit-breaking pill and was still in a stiff stage. This also made Yu Qianqiu a little nervous, worried that Furong wouldn't be able to accept Yin Yu's appearance when she woke up. He asked Yin Yu in return, and she seemed very generous, showing that she didn't care how many women he had, but was afraid that others would dislike her because of her poor background. It could be seen that she was a little worried that Furong wouldn't accept her. Yu Qianqiu could only comfort her out of kindness. After all, now that things had come to this, he had to slowly try to make them get along, and they couldn't not see each other for the rest of their lives, right? It was the first time that Yu Qianqiu saw the night view of the purple bamboo forest. At night, the forest was filled with misty spiritual qi, which could be said to be quite dense, and all of it was emitted by the purple bamboo. This made Yu Qianqiu feel a little strange. Plants could actually emit spiritual qi, and when he asked Nongzhu, he also didn't know the answer. However, the most strange thing was that the joints of the branches of the purple bamboo were actually glowing with a faint purple light, which couldn't be seen in the daytime. Under the night sky, looking at the bamboo forest, there were dots of soft purple light everywhere, and when a gust of night wind blew, the purple light swayed, and it was very beautiful. Yu Qianqiu made a net bed and found a place where the bamboo was sparser and pulled it up, lying on it, biting the bamboo leaves and looking at the stars. The sky was full of stars, and with the purple light swaying around him, a gust of wind blew, and Yu Qianqiu swayed on the net bed, feeling like he was in a dream. This place was so beautiful that it was a little unreal, and he was really envious of Nongzhu for finding such a good place to live. If only I could live like this leisurely for the rest of my life. He couldn't help but let out a sigh, with his arm behind his head. What are you sighing about? Immortal Crocodile, who didn't mix with others, suddenly appeared beside him. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and smiled at him. Seeing that he was stroking the bamboo next to him, he couldn't help but sit up and ask curiously, "Old monster, is there such bamboo in the celestial world?" Immortal Crocodile touched the bamboo joint that was emitting a soft purple light, looked around, and slowly shook his head. "I've never seen or heard of such a magical bamboo. Not only does it emit light, but it can also emit spiritual qi, which is really incredible. I didn't expect such a good thing to exist in the world. Even you haven't heard of it?" Yu Qianqiu looked around, and his expression became serious. It should be known that Immortal Crocodile's experience was among the best in the celestial world, and he himself regarded him as a know-it-all. Who would have thought that even he didn't know about it? This was a bit unusual. Could it be a natural treasure? "When are you going to leave?" Immortal Crocodile suddenly asked. Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses, looked at the chatting women, and sighed. Some people are destined to be happy, and some people are destined to pay. Let's do it now. With that said, he jumped off the net bed, and the two walked into the depths of the bamboo forest. In the Inn of Lust City, Yu Qianqiu left Immortal Crocodile's room and went straight to the door of Boli's room. He pushed the door and found that it was indeed not locked. These natives were used to staying in the tribe and had no habit of locking their doors. He closed the door, walked to the bedside, and kicked Boli, who was sleeping soundly, awake. When Boli saw him, he immediately asked where he had been, as he hadn't seen him for the past few days. Yu Qianqiu smiled slightly. He realized that this fellow seemed to have gained a lot of weight after not seeing him for a few days. It seemed like he was living a good life. He didn't say much and got Boli to find the other tribesmen. After everyone arrived, he asked them in detail about their experiences over the past few days, and there was nothing unusual. He sent them to Utopia and let them meet their tribesmen. He sat by Boli's bed and fell silent for a while. His gaze gradually deepened, and he instantly made a decision. If Huang Tian still hadn't found any news about the purple flames, he wasn't prepared to wait any longer. He didn't have the patience to wait any longer. Chapter 786. In the underground palace under the city Lord Manor's garden, Yuchincho directly burrowed into the ground. After looking around, his eyes landed on the dirt ball on the table in the center. Every time Huang Tian left this place, he would gather a dirt ball here in case Yuchincho came to find him. Yuchincho walked straight to the table and broke the dirt ball. He sat on the chair and waited quietly. Not long after, Huang Tian came through the wall with a bad expression. As he walked over, he asked, "Where have you been these days? I haven't seen you in the entire Yellow Sand City, and you haven't come to find me." Yuchincho waited for him to sit down before asking, "It doesn't matter where I went. How's the news about the purple flames?" Huang Tian raised his hand and stopped him. He frowned and sighed. "Don't ask about the purple flames for now. The immortal city is in a mess now. It's not good to ask about it. It's not too late to ask after things stabilize. Don't run around during this period in case something happens." Yuchincho sized him up and asked curiously, "You don't look too good. Did something happen in the immortal city?" Huang Tian sighed softly. "Immortal Lord Night Owl and 2 Netherworld generals are dead. Immortal Lord Dancing Ji is also heavily injured. Everyone in the immortal city is in danger, afraid that the madman will appear again. Who has the mood to help me ask about the purple flames?" Yuchincho's eyes widened. He could not sit still anymore. He stood up and asked in disbelief, "You mean the madman who challenged the immortal lord last time appeared again? He even killed immortal Lord Night Owl and 2 Netherworld generals?" "That's right." Huang Tian shook his head and sighed. "I don't know where this person came from. Not only is he getting stronger the more he fights, his cultivation is also improving at a godly speed. This time, the 2 immortal lords and the 2 Netherworld generals had joined forces to capture him and interrogate him about the way to enter and exit the Heaven and Earth Chinkoan formation. Who knew that he, who had been injured by the 2 immortal lords last time, would appear this time, with the exception of immortal Lord Ji Wu. The other 3 were all dead. It's hard to imagine, it's really hard to imagine, what kind of cultivation method can increase one's cultivation so quickly in this world." Yuchincho sucked in a breath of cold air and sat down on the ground. He knew that Bai Changchun was fierce, but he didn't expect him to be so strong that he couldn't believe it. "How long has it been? He actually killed 3 immortal monarchs? Are you sure this news is true?" Yuchincho gulped and asked. Frowning, Huang Tian snapped, "Do you think I would joke about something like that?" As he spoke, he stood up and said, "The fence gathering is over. I still have things to arrange." We'll continue to inquire about the purple flame after the situation has cleared up. Everyone, don't be anxious. It's better to be careful. Wait. Yuchincho stopped Huang Tian, who was about to leave. He walked closer and asked, "Tell me the truth. What happened at the fence gathering? What did the warriors that were sent to the immortal city do?" Huang Tian shook his head and said, "I'm not too sure about the specifics. I only know that most of them were sent to mine spirit stones. After all, spirit stones are extremely difficult to mine, and those with weak physiques can't handle it. Some of them were directly taken away by immortal Lord Night Owl. I don't think many people know what they're doing." Yuchincho frowned and said, "Then why did they keep some people in the fence gathering and let most of them live in the most primitive state? Aren't you quite smart? I've already made it so clear. Why can't you figure it out?" Huang Tian said disdainfully, "Spirit stone mines are extremely difficult to mine, and they need people with strong physiques. Didn't you realize that the primitive natives' bodies are stronger than the people in the fence gathering? The natives are raised for manual labor, while the people raised in captivity are raised so that the immortal cultivators don't have to live like barbarians and eat raw meat. Everyone is locked up in the Heaven and Earth universe formation, so they have to find some fun, right? Otherwise, they'll suffocate to death." After saying that, he pointed at Yuchincho's head as if to say that he was a blockhead. Then he turned and left. Raised in captivity? Yuchincho was stunned on the spot. Those 2 words made him speechless. He didn't expect the immortals here to raise humans like animals. He sighed and shook his head slightly. He knew that there was nothing he could do about it. These immortals were used to being high and mighty, so why would they care about mortals? In their eyes, mortals were no different from animals. It was good enough that they raised them and didn't kill them. As he thought about it, his thoughts returned to Bai Changchun. He realized that the old fellow really lived up to his title as the #1 expert in the world. He was so strong that he was perversely strong, and wherever he went, he killed. Just as he thought about it, his eyes suddenly opened. He faintly felt that the old fellow was about to leave and probably wouldn't come back to the East Holy Land. Think about it. The old fellow killed 3 of the 2 immortal monarchs and 2 netherworld generals in the East Holy Land. And these 4 were the ones with the highest cultivation in the East Holy Land. With the old fellow's personality, the East Holy Land probably couldn't interest him anymore. The next step would probably be, just as he thought about it, he was stunned again as he felt Lady Mu's summon. He frowned slightly, not knowing what was going on. In a flash, he charged into the mud wall and disappeared. Once he appeared on Obedient Island, Yu Qianzhou looked around but didn't find anything strange. Lady Mu, who was not far away, had already noticed him. She quickly walked toward him and bowed, saying, "Mr. Old Lord is back." The old lord she was talking about was naturally Bai Changchun. Yu Qianzhou immediately teleported back into the house, but he saw that it was empty. There was no sign of Bai Changchun at all. When he turned and walked to the door, he saw Lady Mu rushing over. He immediately shouted in a low voice, "What's going on?" Lady Mu immediately replied, fearfully, "Mister, please listen to me first. Old Lord has indeed returned just now, and he even asked me about you. I wanted to ask you to come back, but Old Lord said there was no need for that. After he walked around the island for a while, he left. Once he left, I felt that I should tell you about it immediately, so I immediately came to find you. In fact, Old Lord has just left almost right after you." With a flash, Yu Qianzhou appeared on the roof outside. He looked around at the Obedient Island that was still the same as before and let out a sigh. It seemed that his guess was right. The old man was really going to leave. He came back this time to take one last look at the Obedient Island that he had stayed in for 1,000 years. It was likely that he would never return after leaving. The human world could no longer keep such a heaven-defying character, and such a heaven-defying character should no longer stay in the human world. This was his destiny. "Lady Mu, which direction did Old Lord go?" Yu Qianzhou suddenly shouted from the roof. He thought that Bai Changchun might have something to tell him when he came back. Lady Mu immediately stretched out her hand and pointed in the air, saying, "Old Lord went in that direction." Yu Qianzhou followed her finger and saw that it was in the direction of Chilly Wind Valley. As he expected, the old man should have gone to the netherworld through the 9th netherworld cave. Then he asked again, "You mean Old Lord has just left?" Lady Mu immediately replied, "That's right. It happened almost right after you came back. He might even make it in time." Yu Qianzhou instantly disappeared from the roof, and after appearing in a remote area of Utopia, he immediately closed his eyes and sensed Bai Changchun's movements. Judging from the direction, Bai Changchun should have just entered the 9th netherworld cave. So fast, Yu Qianzhou opened his eyes in shock. He did not expect Bai Changchun to enter the 9th netherworld cave so quickly. It had only been a while since he left the Obedient Island. The old man's cultivation was indeed terrifyingly high. Without another word, he disappeared on the spot. In order to stop Bai Changchun, he simply teleported and appeared in front of the netherworld gate. The moment he appeared, he immediately sized up the eerie and terrifying surroundings. After all, the netherworld envoy had appeared here previously, and he did not know if there would be any danger. In a huge underground space, the netherworld fire sea was still burning fiercely, and the black miasma lingering in the sky surged. The group of skulls on the walls of the netherworld Iron Mountain were still as ferocious as ever, and the majestic netherworld gate did not move. The feeling this place gave off was still as shocking as ever, and it seemed like nothing had changed. The saw mark he had left on the netherworld gate was still there, and the missing knocker had not been replaced. It seemed like there was no danger. At this moment, someone behind him suddenly said, "Why are you here? Who is it?" Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He turned around and saw Bai Changchun, who was dressed in a green robe, looking at him in surprise. He immediately patted his chest with lingering fear and said, "Master, why didn't you make a sound? You'll scare people to death in this place." Bai Changchun looked around and asked curiously again, "Why are you here? What are you trying to get?" Yu Qianqiu patted his chest and heaved a sigh of relief. He replied, "When I just returned to Shuntian Island, I heard from Lady Mu that you had returned and left. I asked in which direction you went, and guessed that you were coming here, so I came here to wait for you." Bai Changchun nodded slightly, indicating that he understood. Then he walked with his hands behind his back and quietly sized up the surroundings. Yu Qianqiu followed behind him and asked with a smile, "Master, I heard that you killed a celestial monarch and 2 netherworld generals in the East Holy Land, and even injured a celestial monarch. Is this true?" Bai Changchun replied with an "in," and as he looked around, he said indifferently, "I wanted to kill them all, but after thinking about it, I left one alive for you. Maybe you'll need such an expert to practice with in the future, so that you can prepare to explore the immortal and netherworld realms in the future." Yu Qianqiu, who was following behind him, paused. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he followed up again. He said, "Master, you think too highly of me. You actually left in Celestial Monarch Expert for me to practice with. I guess I won't be able to use her. Her level is really too high. Don't compare me with you. I don't care if I can use her or not. Maybe there'll be a day where I can use her. It's better to be prepared now than not. Besides, there's no point in me killing her anymore. The Holy Eastland needs a leader to intimidate the small fry. Otherwise, once chaos breaks out, the ones who will suffer will be those mortals," Bai Changchun said in a carefree manner. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.